Good afternoon and welcome to another in our series of TalkSports, our special edition. That's our weekend edition where we call it Saturday Sports Special. And it's special indeed because this afternoon's program, we have no other than former sports minister, to give him his correct title, former sports minister, but he's also was also a former national athlete, track and field, um, a former national basketballer. He also did some coaching and also a former school principal. No other than Mr. Patrick Simmons is our special guest this afternoon and this weekend as we welcome Mr. Simmons to this afternoon's program. Good afternoon
Hi,
to you, Mr. Simmons.
Mike. Afternoon and afternoon to all your viewers and listeners. It's really a great opportunity for me to be here this afternoon with you for us to discuss sports.
Okay, well, nice seeing you, Mr. Simmons, and all the best to you and family. Though, first of all, let's, as we normally do, how you and family have been coping with the COVID-19.
Well, challenging time, eh? Very, very challenging times. But notwithstanding the challenges, in my opinion, I think we are coping quite well. As you would be aware that it's only myself and Barbara who are here right now because all the kids are out. And we're doing well. We're doing well.
Mhm. Okay, well, that's good to hear. Um, I know it's quite a lot for you for the past few days, especially with getting yourself organized. Well, because you're not just Patrick Simmons, as we knew as the former sports minister. You know, an active farmer, as I said. I should have said that in the introduction. Active farmer. So how the farming has been going?
Yes, well, I'm actively involved in agriculture. And but the dynamic thing about being involved in agriculture at this point in time is that I'm my own boss.
Ah,
So in in terms of organizing times and schedules and saying what should be done and when it should be done, I do my own schedule. I organize when I should go on the farm and what time I will go, what time I will leave, and so forth. So that in itself put me in a different zone, and it put me in a much more comfortable position in life right now, other than having to be instructed by others what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. Now, in terms of what should be done, there is some other person that works along with me that is more technical than me in terms of doing agriculture than so he would outline what we need to do, but in terms of I getting involved and doing is in my own time.
and how have you been able to make that transition? I mean, as sportsman, um, politician in itself, former sports minister, politician, and now into farming. And I mean, it seems as if not just farming, but something you practically enjoying.
Of course, but you see, it boils down to discipline, commitment and discipline. This is the two most important component of life. I was committed to sports. I'm committed to sports. I'm committed to my family. And as a result, whatever sacrifice that need to be made to make sure that things happen along these lines, I will do it. Just the same way to with the agriculture. I'm committed to it. And I consider myself to be a very disciplined person when it comes to time and so forth, and doing what I need to do in order to make things happen. So the transition from being a teacher, principal, coach does not really affect me that much because it all boils down to discipline and commitment, and that is where I am.
But it also appears that the whole issue of farming has been something in the family. I mean, in terms of your family.
Well, from my father's side,
Oh,
my
okay.
father used to my father used to be a farmer, and I think during the days of the revolution, he was nominated, and I think he was farmer of the year. That's Lincoln Belfort Dove. But I made every effort to be the opposite to this man, but it seems to me that all the efforts being made is like I still end up following that particular trend in his life, you know. But at the end of the day, I think it runs to the family on my father's side.
Okay, so how you got? Let's go back. Tricks. Well, permit me if I say Triggs or Triggs. You know, I think you actually call that. Yeah. How you actually got involved in sports originally?
Well, my involvement in sports dated back to my years at primary school at the St. Andrew's Methodist School. I was noted mainly for during that period of time as a track athlete and also a footballer. In fact, as I was the goalkeeper for the primary school, St. Andrew's Methodist School. I was the goalkeeper and for 2 years, you know. And then I went on to represent the school at track and field too. Whereas, you know, talented in that respect, and not only on the track but also in the field. You know, so I ran and threw the shot put, discus, and everything like that. So that was that phase. But I think what really gave me the impetus to keep on would have been basketball and then the Trenchtown Sports Club. The Trenchtown Sports Club was mainly involved in football, although they had a basketball team too, but the football. The level of discipline I developed from participating with that club during that period, and at the same time to having to rise very early every morning to go and practice basketball that used to be at the Market Square in Grenville. And my mother, she played a very important and vital role in making sure that I was up for 5 o'clock every morning. She would come and scratch below my foot and say to me, "Time to move." And as a result, that level of discipline transitioned not only to sports, but even in my sojourn in academia. So I never had a problem in rising early, even up to today. 5 o'clock don't really take me in bed. I'll have to rise, get up, and even if I you know, move away from the bedroom and go outside or do something different, but rising early, and I refer to that as discipline. I had the same experience while I was at university in the States, because my roommate who was a Trinidadian, he would rise very late. He couldn't understand how it is that 5 o'clock in the morning I up. So I always had approximately 2 hours head start of the majority of the students, because I know that I had to really work extremely hard, you know, to achieve. But I was committed and I was very disciplined.
Mm-hmm. And Patrick Simmons as a competitor in, well, you spoke about getting involved at the primary school level, but into the secondary, because we have a lot to talk about with the secondary school, because I know there are a lot of folks who will be, I don't think they would have forgive people like Patrick Simmons and others for the stress they put on GBSS and others during your time in school, you know, in terms of, you know, the competitiveness, you know, during those times. But Patrick Simmons as a sportsman in secondary school, especially at the St. Andrews Anglican Secondary School.
Yeah, I think that is where my talent really came into fruition and really came with an outburst, because there were a couple of guys that went to SAS that lived in the Grenville area, and they were considered to be very good athletes. I can remember there was one guy called Pichi. He had the shot put record in SAS for many years. And in 1979, I broke that shot put record, and you know, they couldn't understand how Simmons could or Trick to just come and break Pichi record just like that. So my development in the field of sport really blossomed during my years at the St. Andrews Anglican Secondary School. And I attribute it to both Mr. Julian, as the former principal, his son, and a custodian, a very good custodian of the school, Mr. Eric Donald, who used to be a GBSS boy. but, but he was very, very influential and very committed to making sure that SAS moved from strength to strength when it comes to not only track and field, but sports in general. So he would have played a very important role in my development during that period. I could recall once we went down, we were preparing for the intercall, but at the same time they had some games at the at Tantin in preparation for some other games, some other regional games, and he decided that SAS must take part as a team. So we went down, and that was the first time I ran the 400 meters. Myself and Specky Boy. Yes, Specky Boy, I think Specky Boy was in GBSS at the time. And after that 400 meters, man, watch, I vomited. I was vomiting my whole intestine. And he was there to encourage, and I realized, that I had the talent even for the 400 too. So that again to kind of spur me on, and went on to run the 400. So I did the 400, the 200, the 100, and then the field events, the shot put, the discus, the javelin, and then the long jump, even the high jump too. And my close relationship with Jericho actually developed through the long jump and basketball. But the long jump is where we really started off, because he used to be representing GBSS and I used to be representing SAS. And that fruitful year of 1980, after Dominic Mitchell would have beaten in the high jump, when time for the long jump, well, I had it open because he was somewhat demoralized from the high jump, and he came in, and then I went on to win the long jump in that year. But not only the long jump, but also the Trevor Modest, who would have participated in the shot put and the discus. He came first, I came second in both the shot put and the discus. And then I went on to win the long jump and came second in the 200 meters. And then we came second in the 4x4 and won the 4x1. So for that particular year in 1980, which was the year I actually came on the scene and did extremely well. I won 7 medals at the intercall in one day. Yeah, so that was in itself was a remarkable achievement. And it seems to me that at that time I was probably the only athlete that had the talent to do all the events, both the field and the track. Then I moved on from there. But SAS really helped me, and Mr. Julian Creswell, or Julian, I refer to him as the father of SAS. He really assisted me and motivated me in a lot of ways to be what I am today. In fact, I see him as probably the male figure that had the single most important influence in my life.
And I think quite a number of others will say likewise, because not only in academics did SAS excelled, but also in sports in particular. There was many glorious years, I should say, glory years, as we would probably put it, when SAS excelled. And there was something that was sort of unique about the athletes of the St. Andrews Anglican Secondary School, the size. What was that about the St. Andrews Anglican Secondary School? When you recall the Trevor Modest, yourself, and there were quite a few others. Even I'm trying to get his name, Godfrey Auguste, and even before that we had Livingston Nelson. What was so unique about these athletes coming from SAS and those during those years that had the size and had that sort of advantage over the others?
I think nutrition, motivation, and training would have played a very important role in our performance not only at the intercall but nationally. Now, while at the senior level, Livingston was a junior. When I was at the senior level, Livingston was a junior, and there were other guys like Godfrey was also a junior or a sub-junior. I think probably Godfrey was a sub-junior. Livingston and Eugene Lickwish were juniors. And the thing about it is that we trained, and we had a lot of options in terms of where to train and what time to train, and the school gave us a lot of support. So you will find us training in the morning time, because we had the opportunity to come to the school in the night time to study, and that was compliment Mr. Julian and Mr. Donald. Then we would move on. We would train on Big Bay, and Big Bay at that time was really noted for the soft sand. So we did a lot of plyometrics and training that would have helped assisted us with developing our muscles and so forth. So that in itself, would have helped us tremendously. Then the nutritional aspect of it, nutrition really played a critical role in our development, because the school, through Mr. Julian's program again too, and Mr. Donald, they actually looked out for us as athletes of the school. So we were fed properly, and we were given guidance on what to eat, when to eat, and the amount and so forth. Well, the amount they had issues with that, because as young we eat a lot. But so it was a somewhat informal, but it was a holistic approach, an informal holistic approach that assisted us to develop the way that we developed. And when we came to St. George's now to participate at the intercall games, we were always referred to as old men. But if you look at us today, the same guys that would have participated during the time that represented other schools, we are all same age group. Livingstone and their group remained the same age group. So it had nothing to do with persons being placed in categories that they were not aged for. But it boiled on to size. I even had an experience with one of my sons. Shakir, that's the eldest boy. He participated at the intercall just the same way too, and he is a massive guy.
He's still.
And this young lady had issues with him, and she called him old man and saying so forth, and only to discover later on that the same young lady was his cousin. She went to a different school, and her mother called Barbara and relate to Barbara. Well, look at what the daughter would have said, and she was elder than Shakir. So that still that issue of size remains with the St. Andrews Anglican Secondary School for many years. Yes.
Yeah, and as one who would have attended it, you taught there, and also principal, and SAS in itself, and mind me, I'll be in and between coming into SAS St. Andrews, because we need to give credit where credit due, would have produced many outstanding sportsmen and sportswomen over the years. But in your time, what you can recall, whether as a student, whether as a teacher or a principal, would have been probably the best time or best period of St. Andrews Anglican Secondary School in sports. We know of the exploits of Aline Francique, for example. But in addition to that, what you will describe as probably the best period for St. Andrews Anglican Secondary School in sports over the years?
I think we did demonstrate great prowess during the days of the revolution, because the first festival cup, SAS won the first cricket festival cup that was held during the time of the revolution, and that in my mind would have been very significant. Added to that, from 1980 right up to 1985, the boys would have won the boys division of the intercall, and the girls would have won before that period. They would have won on 2 occasions before the boys actually started to win at the intercall boys division. So that in itself, I think, would have been the time when SAS really did quite a lot to break the stronghold that both the GBSS and the PDC had on track and field. Nationally, in terms of schools, the SAS did very well during that period to break that threshold. When we went on, the school went on, to win on a number of different years in succession. I think at one time we won 8 years in succession. So that in itself again would have demonstrated how powerful the school was in terms of track and field. And at the same time, the system that were developed by Mr. Julian and carry on through the period would have assisted in terms of giving the school the vision and the techniques on how to win at Interpol. Because I could recall too that Mr. Julian Jr. now, he used to calculate how much the school was going to win by days before the event. Margin of error, 2 or 3 points sometimes. Yeah, 2 or 3 points. So we had that. It was actually a science. Added to that, you're coming out to Intercall as an official of the school. You know that there are certain times you won't be able to see the Intercall. You won't be able to see an event because your responsibility was to take care of the athletes, or your responsibility is to go to the high jump area and make sure that who's high jumping there, that you give them techniques, or you try to motivate them and try to correct them when they're going wrong, and just to be seen. So it was a science. It wasn't something that just happened abstractly, just happened in there. It was a science that was implemented, and we had a good core of workers that were very committed to ensuring that that we win big. And then the support of the parish. The parish now was always the school. So when we won at the Intercall, we didn't only win for SAS, but we won for the parish. So it was a parish thing. And most of us again would have been motivated by this town and country issue, because the town and country was reality. It was something that was really perpetrated by those that felt that you come from quote unquote the country, so then you're not supposed to win. And that didn't only happen in track and field at the Intercall level, but even at the national basketball level too, because I had my own experiences. If I should just divert a little to say that I could recall the first time that I made the national team to travel out of Grenada. I was told, and in fact it was said by the coach at the time, that country boys don't really have, most times they don't have a passport. I was the only that was considered a country boy there at the time. I pull out my passport from my bag, which I had, and I travel with it most of the times. Pull it and I say, I have my passport. So you have to go with me. I tell him that, but my passport, then I realized that I was probably not the tallest, but the biggest boy on the team. I was 208 pounds at the time. Cyril Cox was taller than me. And I got a uniform that fit me like underwear. Yes, but I can uniform Jericho encouraged me, you have to take it and go, you have to go. So, I'm just making that point to show that things like that or incidents like that would have motivated us to make
So it was a struggle all along, though.
Struggle all along. And we never like losing. That doesn't mean that we would do things contrary to what the rules would have stated for us to win. But we were motivated to win at all times. And that transcended not only track and field and basketball and sport, but in life in itself. I don't like to lose, but I could accept when I lose. You recall when I lost the 2013 general election, I called the Prime Minister and tell him I conceded. We lost. Same thing with the representative for St. Andrews Southeast. Call and say I conceded that we lost. I quick to accept when I realized that we lost. I quick to accept and to start preparing for the next session. That is what we did at Intercall, and it transcended Intercall, and it manifests itself in my life because it's all about commitment and discipline.
So, in all of that, Simon, what really got you involved in politics? I listen to you, and I have to see the synergy in terms of how it was able to push you into politics, because we'll get to the point, but I'm seeing how we gradually move in.
Right. You see, Pastor, that's a very crucial question, and a question that I don't know if I would be able to explain everything in where we are right now, but I'm going to try to make it as palatable as possible. I never had no desire to get involved in the political arena. It was never my desire. It was never my upbringing, my cultural upbringing to be involved in the political arena. In fact, when I became the principal of the school, it was my honest desire to retire as principal of the St. Andrew's Anglican Secondary School. Plus, I always look at what Mr. Julian would have done for us, and it was my desire to try to do better than what Mr. Julian would have done for us. So at the end of the day, I could rest quietly and say that I did my job, and a job well done, because of what would have transpired. It was not to be. But at the same time, too, I accepted and I moved on. Now, I got involved in the political arena because of issues that was taking place in St. Andrew with the former MP of St. Andrew Southeast. And then I was approached. Myself and him were very good friends. Very, very, very good friends. Then I was approached by the NDC to get involved because of that. So I decided I was going to assist where I could. But prior to that, we had a major issue that developed with my life that would have pushed me in a particular direction that it was not my desire to go that direction, that was the political field. Because here it is, I was at the school, principal, came back from the United States, studying at Cheney University, came back with a degree in dietetics, but very strong chemistry base. And I came back and I started teaching. I reported back to the school and started teaching at the school, at the St. Andrew's Anglican Secondary School. And for whatever reason, after being there for some time and then became the principal, I got a letter from the Ministry of Education stating that the scholarship that I applied for, it was granted to me. And I said, I knew I didn't apply for no scholarship. But here it is, an opportunity to go to the University of the West Indies to study science education, a master's degree in science education. But I knew I did not apply for no scholarship. So I was very reluctant. But having the type of woman I have in my life, she encouraged me that you can't make an opportunity like that pass you, you have to go. So I decided, okay, fine. So I took on the challenge. I said, okay, right. Decided I was going to. Then Hurricane Ivan came in 2004. So because of Hurricane Ivan, I decided in my mind quietly that, you see this thing, I live in this thing alone. I'm not going to go to Trinidad and study nothing. I'm just leaving that alone. But I was approached by approached two persons in the ministry that were top senior officers in the ministry. One said to me that you have no option, you have to go. The other said to me that, well, I understand the situation with your children because the boys were here and we were living in La Puche at the time. The house roof went off and so forth. You see, I understand the situation, so I will encourage you to ask for a deferral. So I did ask for a deferral, and the deferral was granted. And in 2005, I went off to Trinidad to study at the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine. I did very well and came back. After the studies, I came back and reported to the St. Andrew's Anglican Secondary School. And I was told by the principal at the time that she got a call from the ministry stating that I should be given anything to do. I mean, that's I suppose I'm the principal and you getting called from the ministry. So I followed up. The ministry had me come down. Well, I started recording all the information that transpired between myself and the ministry. Anybody called in connection with I and work with the ministry, I started develop a dossier. I did that. And it reached to the point now where I was sitting on the corridor of the school for 10 long months, not having anything to do, only if I choose to do it. And I started coaching, but I used to be coaching the basketball team before, so I coached the basketball team. I'm not here anymore.
Yeah, just to clarify, you were doing all of that as the principal of the St. Andrews
Yes,
Secondary School.
St. Andrews Secondary School. Yes. So that is when I got involved in agriculture, and I realized the importance of the land and how a critical role it plays in keeping you very sober and putting life in a different dimension, a different perspective. And added to that, giving you the opportunity to communicate with the higher being. I discovered that during that period. So I spent a lot of time in the land, backyard at the time. Added to that, going to the river. And it was a new experience for me. And I think it really drew me closer to my creator. So, notwithstanding the negatives that were happening, that in itself put me in a different zone, in a different strata when it comes to life. All right, so the ministry decided now that I have to go before the Public Service Commission, because it was claimed that the reason why I'm not back as principal and even being on the corridor of the school is because what they sent me to study, I did not study that. I did what I wanted to do. And that was absurd. That was not possible because it was a scholarship and everything was paid for. I didn't have to pay a cent. All I had to do was study and make sure that I did it well and represent the country. And that is what I did. So I presented all my documents, and the document that I got stated that I had to study MEd in curriculum development and implementation, and not science education, because science education at that time was offered in Mona and not St. Augustine. But the ministry got the correspondent, and they did the changes, and then accusing me of not studying what I was sent to study. Hence the reason why I am not in the principal's office, which was far from the truth. So when we went before the Public Service Commission, judge looked at the case, and then she listened, and I pulled out my dossier and presented everything, and they realized that what I was saying was the truth. So then she turned to me and she asked me what it is that I want to do. I told her my heart is in the school. However, because of what would have transpired at the time, being in the corridor for 10 months, and students seeing me and nobody knowing what's going on, see Monday upstairs day, and so I decided I can't go back to the school. So the alternative was to go to TAMCC. But somebody informed me in TAMCC that it doesn't make sense I come into TAMCC, because if I come to TAMCC, it's only one course I will have the opportunity to teach. But I had no choice, I had to go. So I went down to TAMCC, and I did third day for that semester. I had three sessions for the week, Monday, Wednesday, I think it was Friday. And thereafter, I had nothing to do. So I would go down and turn and come back up to Grenville, and that was a very depressing and challenging time for me, because here it is that you've been paid, you got an increase in salary, you've been paid transport allowance, and you're reporting to work and you have nothing to do. In fact, my last semester at the TAMCC, I had one student teaching research method as supervisor on Fridays for 1 hour, and that was for the entire term. So all these things were happening, and I guess, they realized that, things weren't going the way that I wanted. And the party NDC approached me, and 5 weeks or so before, 5 months before the general election, I decided, okay, I was going to go, with encouragement from people within the party and people from the community and so forth. I even had to apply for early retirement, and that again in itself lingered on, and not until after we got into government I got it. So it's a whole complex. What triggered it off is a different issue again too, which I think I don't really want to get to now, but what triggered the whole thing? Yes.
So you're actually saying you went in as a minister. Well, you got into politics, you got into government as a minister, even without your complete retirement?
Yes, of course, because I have documents to prove that my retirement came, and I retired at a very early age, because I was in my 40s. Yes, probably about 44, 45, somewhere around there. And my retirement came in around September, October of 2028. So all when I declared, or when the party declared that I was clear with my retirement and so forth, that wasn't the truth. But I guess with the way things were at the time, you wanted to see a change. You wanted to see a change, so you go ahead with faith, and it worked out for me.
Wow, interesting enough. Quite a
Yeah,
bit.
very, very
What?
interesting. You see, there are a lot of things that you look at the surface and you may not know, and you make judgment calls, and then you put people in particular category, and and you brand everybody because you're a politician, you're a thief, and you're this and you're that, and but the same way too is human beings. There are people in the church that do certain things that you wondered, but that's the way it is. And I've reached to a point in my life where I understand that, I have accepted that, and I know that we are temporary custodians of wheresoever we are placed, and wheresoever you are placed, you must just try to give of your best. Try to give of your best. Sometimes it will be challenging, because that 5 years I spent as a government minister would have been the most challenging part of my time of my life. Most challenging time of my life. Yeah. Outside, the most challenging event that I experienced would have been the Hurricane Ivan, the demise of the political comrades on the fort, and then the one event during my stint as a minister during the NDC administration is when persons had to reshuffle the prime minister in his wisdom thought it was right to reshuffle the cabinet, and members decided that they weren't going forward. This thing shook me. This thing, because it took me right back to what happened on the court. It shook me. So that again was a very challenging time for me. Yes.
And you became you eventually the National Democratic Congress. In fact, when you said NDC is in full reference to the National Democratic Congress, when it became the government of the day, and you became a minister. At the time, were you convinced that you would have been handed the sports ministry portfolio, or there was a challenge?
No, I didn't have a clue what was going on. I didn't have a clue what it is, when, and how. I didn't have a clue. All I know that I ran, and I know that they had a good support system around me. In fact, I had 3 former MPs, or 3 candidates for the San Andreas Southeast. Then we had a very dynamic general secretary at the time that was working along with me. And the people of the people of Grenville in particular, and Telescope, they embraced me. So that pulled me through. Like 36 votes, that pulled me through. Because here it is, you have somebody that just came in, we didn't have a clue what's going on, and my whole culture was more for education and sports, not and community. Because I used to be doing a lot in the community, coaching, having events and things for young people and so forth. So that in itself would have propelled and led me over the boundary line, over the finishing line. But at the end of the day, in terms of being politically wise, I was not politically wise. There are some things that I understand, but generally, in terms of the way politics is, especially this party politics is organized, what I know now, if I knew it then, probably I might have still been in office. Yeah.
And when you assumed the portfolio as Minister of Sport, at that time, what was your vision as a former sportsman, a national, athlete, basketballer, etc.? What was your vision for sports for Grenada as the Minister of Sports then?
No, like everything else, like your family, you must have policies. You must have, whether if it's written or whether if it's contemplated and you have it as in your mind, you must have policy. What it is that you want to see your children grow up to be, what kind of citizens you want them to be. Not whether they become an engineer or whether they become a farmer. Not in that context, but to make them be law-abiding people. Make them be community-oriented people. Make sure that they obey the rules and the laws that govern the state and govern the school and govern themselves. And make sure that they give back to community, because at the end of the day, it's community. It takes a village to raise a child. It's not only the parents, but the school and the community that they walk in every day to get from school to home. So they have to show respect not only to the seniors, but to everyone within the community. So just the same with the politics, you know. You must have a policy in order to guide. Well, when I read, there was a youth policy that we worked with. So we didn't have to, do any changes when it comes. Well, one or two changes, superficial things, we changed program name and then but there was no policy guiding sports, and that is where my heart was at the time. So my foremost objective and desire was to make sure that we have a perfect policy to guide the development of sports for Grenada.
And that was the journey, or the start of the journey, for what you will describe as the national sports policy.
Yes, national sports policy. That is what it emerged into, and the way it happened, we got good support from UNICEF, because remember UNICEF they were here since after long before, but they played a very pivotal role during the recovery period. They played a very pivotal role during the recovery period. So UNICEF was here working with young people, and I had the opportunity to speak with the representative from Barbados that came in, and they wanted to meet with the Minister for Youth and Sports and Culture. And I had that opportunity to meet with her, and we had a good chat. And then I raised the issue of the sports policy, and there she was 100% supportive of the issue. And that is where the funding came from to write the sports policy.
So the sports policy was fully funded by UNICEF.
UNICEF, yes. Yes, UNICEF played a very critical role, a very pivotal role in funding and in assisting us with getting the human resource, the consultant, to make it happen in the Grenada context, because the person that did it is a Grenadian. Added to that, the policy advisor within the Ministry of Sports was a sports fanatic too, so he wanted to make sure that this thing happened. So he put all his effort and energy into it. We had a lot of convincing to do, because there are those who would have showed a particular face, but at the end of the day, they really didn't want the policy to be a reality. So we had to work with them.
And what you thought at the time, what was your thinking about behind a sports policy for Grenada? What it is ultimately you was hoping to achieve?
All right. I was looking at it from the perspective of grassroots. The policy was developed from the bottom up to the top. So in other words, those at the bottom, the participants, the playmakers, those that sweat and toil, and those that give commitment, and those that without no rewards, financial and otherwise, but just being there for the development of sport, they should play a major role in developing a sports policy, and they should have a critical role to play after the policy has been developed. So they were the foundation. So that was the whole concept. So that is the reason why, when the policy went before the Parliament of Grenada, it wasn't referred to as a sports policy. It was referred to as the National Sports Council. That is what it was referred to, the National Sports Council Bill, because the foundation of the policy comes through the National Sports Council. Because if you want to get the grassroots people involved, then you must organize the grassroots people. And how you going to organize the grassroots people? You organize the grassroots people by forming this national sports policy and giving them, each parish, a say as a major stakeholder in how sports should be managed and the direction sport is going to take in the country.
And then there are a number of things that we can talk about on the whole issue of the sports policy, because I recall traveling from New York to Grenada just to participate in the consultations. In fact, two consultations I actually participated. One was actually in Guelph in St. John, but and they were broad-based, consultation among various stakeholders. Are you disappointed that even after all of that, that there wasn't any interest and pressure from the other stakeholders in terms of the implementation of the sports policy in its broadest term?
Yes, I'm disappointed, but at the same time, I understand policy and the perspective of policies. Policies emerge from the perspective of a particular political organization that goes on to form the government. So how they view development, the policy itself would emerge from that. So you have to I understand, and I guess the nation have to understand too, that if the perspective of development of that particular industry or sector is not in line with what those that were there before, then you would expect that their perspective will take precedence in terms of how the policy is being developed. So in other words, the perspective of the NDC, of the National Democratic Congress, in terms of the development of sports is going to be grassroots. So if it is grassroots, then the national sports council must be the bedrock for the development. So you're working from bottom up. So that is the party's, the NDC's view. So the policies develop around that. So if another organization comes in and their view is not to develop it from bottom up, but to develop it from top down, then obviously the policy is going to reflect something totally different. So you cannot get that organization or that party or that government doing it a different way. But you have to get the challenge here is to get the people to understand that if you do it from the top down, then you will get lost within the whole perspective of the thing. But if you do it from the bottom up, then you will be an integral part of it, and you will be a custodian, so you want to protect it. So that is where we are. So I cannot get upset with the current administration for not implementing the policy. It's up to them, and it has a lot to do with how they view sports, or how they view agriculture, or how they view tourism. Because the policy that is developed from sports, agriculture, tourism, it doesn't matter. It comes from their view of how the things should be developed. So their policy will be based on that. So I did my part.
Okay, so so there was a policy back then in 2010, 2011,
Yes.
and then there is now a draft policy. I think it's dated sometime in January 2020 that has been circulated. What would you say? And you may have looked at the original and now the draft. What were some of the areas of the policy, of the previous policy, that would have been implemented, and those that you were hoping that could have been implemented up to this point in time?
Okay. Now, again, too, I had the opportunity to see the draft policy, right? I did not have the opportunity to participate in any of the consultation. I don't know whether or not they really had consultation, but I didn't have the opportunity to participate in any consultation. But from my understanding, from what I'm seeing is that there are a lot of parts of the 2012 the 2012 the 2012 sports policy that seems to be cut and paste with the current draft policy. Okay, and in itself that could be authentic. It could be authentic in the sense that a lot of work was actually done, went into the consultation and so forth. So these were the views of the participants, the national associations like the football, basketball, cricket. So that was their input. So they would have supported it. So if the current administration decided, okay, this is what we're going to go with that part, I think it's authentic because the whole process of consultation would have gone already, and that is the final verdict on what needs to be done. So it's authentic. So we move with that. All right. Now, what is very troubling about what I'm seeing here now is that the National Sports Council has disappeared. So in other words, if the National Sports Council actually disappear, we are saying now that there is no need for the parishes to get involved at that level in terms of organizing and making sure that the communities are involved in the development of sports in the country. Now, I must make mention to the St. John's Sports Council. The model that was used during the consultation process was actually implemented in St. John years before, and it's actually working even up to this day, because not so long ago I had a discussion with Mr. Taylor, and he was saying to me that, look, the council still operating well. So it's something that was actually tested, and it was proven to be effective. So you didn't just jump out of the sky. So the question is now, why it is that aspect in terms of the grassroots development vanish away from the draft policy. But again, too, it all has to do with the vision and the policies of the current administration. But from my own rational thinking, it's a matter of control. That's how I'm seeing it. It's a matter of control. So the ministry must be in control of the development of sports in the country, and they must not only control, but they must be in a position where they could actually micromanage what happens. So in other words, let me give you a good scenario. In other words, the playing field in Grenville, the Victoria Park or the Progress Park. These playing fields would have been under the auspices of the National Sports Council. And the National Sports Council, representative from the parish of St. Andrew, they would have had direct control over that facility. So at the end of the day, the council would be the one responsible for setting up all the schedules in terms of usage for the facility at the parish level. So we know that cricket is going to be held from this month to that month. So they make the application, the Cricket Association make the application, and the Cricket Association, based on the structure, they too would have been part of the parish council because you have one representative from each of the sports. So they make representation, and then the secretariat, and each parish would have a secretariat, and that was already in trend. So we know that St. Andrews had a secretariat, we know that St. Mark had one, St. George's had one, St. John had one. So they will do whatever is necessary, and the National Council itself would be aware. And because of the change in the structure of the sports, the Ministry of Sports now, the National Sports Council, they would become an integral part of the Ministry of Sports. So you have according to the structure, you have the minister, you have the permanent secretary, you have the coordinator, and somewhere lateral, you'll have the representative from the National Sports Council. And then you have other committees that would be part of the council, would have representation through the National Sports Council. So in other words, with this happening, you have grassroots development, and the ministry would be well informed on what is happening, because they would have guidance, or they would have control, not shouldn't use the word control, but they would have oversee of everything that is happening within the parishes. But in terms of the decision making, it will come from the parishes. And I think, in my humble opinion, I think that is the best way we can actually foster good development, grassroots development, people's participation as it relates to sports, not only sports, but even agriculture too.
And there were some questions in regards to some key points of the sports policy. Some people wanted you to give some key points of the sports policy, but based on what you're saying there now, if I can kind of summarize in context, are you saying that part of the sports policy, or a key point of the sports policy, was the whole reorganization or reorganizing of the Ministry of Sports?
Of course, yes. Yes, that would have been a major part of the policy. The Ministry of Sports would have been reorganized with a different mandate. With a different mandate, not organizing competition, and actually the structure, just to go through some notes I have here, the structure of the National Council. You have a board, an executive board of the National Council, then you have a chief executive officer, you have a sports advisory committee, and then you have the parish councils. So that would have been the structure for the parish councils, or for the National Sports Council. So you had representation from across the board, and then the Ministry of Sports. I mean, if I just okay, the Ministry of Sports would have been the lead agent,
right?
The lead agent, and their structure now would have been. Let me just permit me one moment to get. Okay, so you have now the revised structure for sports, for the sports division would have been the Minister for Sports, the permanent secretary, the coordinator for sports, and then the National Sports Council representatives. So that would have been a lateral, together with the coordinator of sports. Then you have the deputy coordinator of sports, and the deputy coordinator of sports would assign the responsibility for program development. So that would be a national thing. Then you have the deputy sports coordinator. So you have two deputy sports coordinators, one for program development, and then you have one for facilities development. So under that, you also have a facility development manager. So the coordinator for facilities would have been coordinating with this facility manager to ensure that everything goes right with the grounds. Notwithstanding that the parish councils would have been in charge in terms of implementing programs and giving schedules and so forth, and how it's going to be utilized. Then you have the groundsman, the caretaker, and so forth, giving support to the facilities. And in fact, we had a very good system already implemented to facilitate that, because that is where this whole, but I think that still continues. The roving care group would have been the groups that were scheduled and assigned to specific grounds, so that they were taking care of all the grounds throughout the country. Yeah. So that is where that is how the schedule was actually organized, or the structure for the sports division. So you also had, under the coordinator of program development, you have the senior coaches, and then you have junior coaches. So you have you know what was interesting about this thing? I recall very vividly that when this thing came up during the debate in the parliament, the Prime Minister made a comment to the effect that, yes, well, this is sounding good, but where are you going to get the money to implement such a program?
Okay, but at that time, the current Prime Minister, who at the time was the leader of the opposition.
Leader of the opposition, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. The current Prime Minister, who was leader of the opposition at the time, made the point. He supported it But where are we going to get money to implement a program of that nature? But this thing would have you'd have evolved over a period of time. You couldn't implement everything one time, but the focus of attention was to the development of the playing fields and then the parish councils, because you have to give teeth to the parish councils. So you have to develop the playing field and see, hey, okay, this field that we lit would be your field to take care of. So the concept then was to make sure that we light at least one field in every parish. So we got through to four of the fields. We got through with 4 within the period that we were there. But St. David, we were going to light suggest. Then the National Stadium was outside of the ambit of this whole thing, because the National Stadium is, by law, is a different creature. It's a different creature. So the policy would have addressed it in a different manner, because there was a different structure for that.
Okay. So the national sports policy as it was then, what would you say would have been some of the key areas that would have achieved by then? There would have been certain things that would have been accomplished as part of the national sports policy up to the time of your departure as sports minister.
Yes, well, we had actually 1 year, because it came into it was passed in the House of Representatives in 2012, and it was passed in the House of the Senate in 2012 also, but in December. So then we had part of 2013, but prior to that, we already started working on the council, because that would have been the key creature. So we started working on that, and then we also started with the lighting of the playing fields, because we know that with the playing fields being lit, we'll be able to give the parish council something to start with. Then we also started working on the national games, because there's a proposal for a national games. I think it was biannual national games. So we said we were going to start with cricket and the 2020 and football. So we had uniforms. We had uniforms for the cricket and for the football. So we brought in uniforms for all the parishes, and things happened. The people they wanted something.
Yeah,
to.
but what I'm interested about that is that as sports minister, you were doing something at the time that would have affected even your ministry in terms of the structure. What motivated you? What drove you into doing something? I mean, I'm not certain that if I was in the ministry, if I would have been happy with something like that, because it would have meant a sort of curtail of my responsibility, etc. But some people would see it, okay, the sports is bigger than me, and I'm only there to serve. So you saw it at the time of giving the communities, giving this parish councils the opportunity to push the sports forward. But in terms of the ministry, what it was like as minister and others in the ministry, knowing for a fact that the whole structure of the ministry was being changed.
Let me tell you something. I can recall very vividly that a former president of the Football Association, who was actively involved in the consultation process, made a comment, and that comment that he made became a reality, because he was way ahead in terms of looking at the different leadership styles and policy development in the country, because he's a policy man too. And he said that, well, what is happening here now, he applauded, and he finds it's a very good structure. But this is only for this administration. Another administration coming in would not see giving up the authority of the Ministry of Sports to parish and National Sports Council to run sports. They would not see, they wouldn't buy into that. So that we have to be careful with that, and that became a reality. So in other words, he saw that way down the line, what happens, what transpires now is that that power or that authority, level of authority, has been taken away from the grassroots development. But we, as temporary custodians of where we are, we must always remember the word temporary. We are here to serve and to serve for a particular time. And we must make, we ought to make the most of the time in terms of doing well for the people that we represent. You know, we just can't want to, because we're in authority, we just can't feel, well, okay, that is what I want. And that is how it should be. And then I would always remain in charge. No, you wouldn't always remain in charge. There were many sports ministers before me. There will be many sports ministers after me. And I acknowledge that, and I recognize that, and I accept that. So whatever is being done, you try to do it so that you have continuity with the people. Continuity with the people so that what is working well now would continue to work well, with tweaking here and there, making adjustment, because, you know, like we have, as we refer to, we have a new normal now. So things would have to change. But in terms of the bedrock, the foundation would remain, and then you build on that. So if you're a member of the Cricket Association, you won't be a member of the Cricket Association forever. So don't try to do things that would make you look in a particular light, that you strong man, strong woman. But that is only for a period. And even if you are a permanent secretary and you have jurisdiction and you have the authority to maneuver what is happening and how it should happen, but that is only for a time. So you have to understand that and just try to do what is right and what is best in the interest of those involved. And you see, something I recognize too, when you have children, when you grow children, especially from birth to adulthood or to young adults, you look at life from a different perspective. You see life differently, especially when you're dealing with policies that will affect young people. That policies that will affect young people growing up into adulthood. You look at things differently. So I'm just saying that to say that we must be good custodians. We must be good caretakers. And what we're doing must not be for us to leave a mark that would show us up, but to leave a mark that the people would progress from where they are today to a new horizon tomorrow. And so that you may not even live to see, but your offsprings might hear about what the foundation you have assisted in laying, so that this thing could reach to that particular level. But it's a conscious call, and it's a conscious.
Mm-hmm. You indicated that Prime Minister Dr. Keith Mitchell, then opposition leader at the time, his concern was the financial resources for such implementation. How were you and the government then was able to convince the opposition to be on board to support the sports policy, to give it the support that you needed to pass in Parliament, even with the concern about the financial resources?
But it's good to have bipartisan. But either way, bipartisan or no bipartisan, you would have passed. But it's heartening that he would have supported it. And I could understand the context in which he supported it. He supported it in the context that he himself is a sportsman. He understands very well what is happening. And he understands the importance of having this thing starting from the bottom, grassroots, and let it work its way up in terms of sports development. But politically, it might be a different story. But in terms of sports, and if you're an avid sportsman, sometimes that takes precedence over other things. So they supported Sabola at the time too. He supported it too, and he again too from a sporting background and the community. So
Yes, I think we would have lost Mr. Simmons for a short period of time there. Let me see if we get him back there. Somehow he slipped out on us. I think he's having a little technical problem on his side. There may be some issues on his side. I think someone was saying about they were hearing some crackling and things like that. So, and it may have been on his side, but we try to get back. But just going through some of the comments that came in while Mr. Simmons was making his point there, and it had Deputy Lincoln Deputy was saying good work was done on the policy, but I believe there should have been a national rollout with all ministers throwing the support behind it instead of Triggs alone carrying the load as if it's a Triggs policy. I think it's I think ministers. Well, it's a sports ministry. Ministers. I'm not certain how many of the but that's something probably Mr. Simmons could add when he gets on. He's back on now. He's just getting the audio and thing up. I think Mr. Simmons, you're back with us now.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, I think you're back with us. You were making a point, but at the same time there was a Lincoln Tour Deputy was saying good work was done on the policy, but I believe there should have been a national rollout with all ministers throwing their support behind it instead of Triggs alone carrying the load as if it's a Triggs policy. Your comment?
No. We had good support from the ministers. We had very good support from the Prime Minister at the time. You see, the rollout was involved the cabinet. Ms. Roberts at the time, she gave good support. Peter gave very good support. Nas gave good support, and the Prime Minister himself too gave good support. So the rollout was encompassing. It wasn't just tricksting. It was encompassing because it was sports, and other things probably I choose not to mention, but it was encompassing. It was the entire cabinet had supported it, and it was a force. It was a force. So that in itself, would really played a big role. I think what one of the shortcomings, the time, because here it was 2012, December 2012, and then shortly after we had the general election. So in terms of spreading the good news and having the people knowing, okay, this is the final product, and we have to move forward with it now. Probably that in itself, but something like that took years. It would not took, but it will take years to make it a reality. It will take some years, because it's like selling. You have to sell that. You have to sell the policy, and you have to sell, and they have to see what is happening on the ground, and to connect it with the policy. And what was happening on the ground with the light on the playing field was a good connection. So it was well thought through. It was an excellent connection, because here it is. You have a playing field in Victoria, being lit, and the Victoria Sports Council is responsible, or the St. Mark's Sports Council is responsible for the running and the management of this field. The same thing happening in Hermitage. The same thing happening in Grenville, and St. John, where St. John still continue to be very, very proactive. I can remember the first event they had on the lights in St. John was the Paris Sports Council that was responsible for it, and it was a track and field event. So, well, it's water under the bridge too.
Yeah. Your good friend, Grand Fortune. Well, good afternoon to you, Mr. Fortune. Old St. Andrew's boy. I think it was Grenville Secondary School, right? Grand Fortune. Yeah. Yeah. He asked him, what portions of the policy still remain?
The whole policy is there, because the act, not the act, but the bill still remain. The National Sports Council, it still remain, and all the whole connection, everything is still there. So It's just a matter of implementation. If the custodians now choose to, the matter of implementation is a continue implementing what needs to be done. But if they choose not to, then they'll have to come up with a new structure. And in fact, the new structure does not speak at all about the National Sports Council. In fact, something that I noticed, something that I noticed in the restructuring of the Ministry of Sports, you have the Grenada Olympic Committee replacing the National Sports Council. And then you have an interministerial cabinet appointed committee as part of the Ministry of Sports. So you have two, and also you have a cabinet, you have a sports Grenada, which should also be a cabinet appointed committee. Now I ask myself the question: the Ministry of Sports has responsibility for all sports development in the country as it stands right now. The Olympic Committee has its own charter that has been developed internationally, and it has a mandate to deal with Olympic sports. So Olympic events, track and field, badminton, football. What about cricket and netball? Ask yourself the question, what about cricket and netball? Because cricket and netball, they are not Olympic sports. So, it baffles me why it is that the Olympic Committee must be part of the structure within the Ministry of Sport. I find the Grenada Olympic Committee has a much broader mandate than being associated with the Ministry of Sport. Their responsibility, is the individual associations, because all the Olympic associations affiliates would come under their jurisdiction, and they would have influence on what happened and how it should happen based on the charter that they have and they function under.
Okay, and by way of clarity, I think I took some information there regarding, because in the original sports policy, the Olympic Committee came as one of the lead agency, the lead agencies, right? Because the Ministry of Sports, well, the National Sports Policy in itself was actually had proposed a new role for the ministry with responsibility for sports. It's basically had to do with oversight. I think it was developmental, and it has to do with facilities, right? Yes. So that was the three main areas for the Ministry of Sport under the new sports policy. And then you have the lead agencies that will include the Olympic Committee, the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Works, I think Ministry of Health, the lead agencies as we call them, and things. But in the new draft dispensation, I think the Olympic Committee has come out of the realm of a lead agency and actually into the structure of the Ministry of Sport. And I think that is what in the last when we had the discussion with Colin Peters, I think that was some of the viewers were questioning. They were kind of concerned about the role of the Olympic Committee in the structure of the Ministry of Sports, because they saw the Ministry or rather the Olympic Committee, as you indicated, it has its own Olympic, it's spelled out in its charter in terms of its roles and whatever it is. So I assume in the context of further discussions, and Mr. Peters indicated that there will be some further consultations, that issue can be clarified. Getting back to some comments, Ashley John Phillip had the opportunity to work with Sir Patrick Simmons. He really didn't get recognized for his work. Bleachers, playing field, fencing, farm school, etc. Land use policies, sporting policies. What are these, Mr. Simmons?
Well, water under the bridge. all these things are water under the bridge. No, I had my time. I did what I could have done I feel comfortable. I could walk through Grenville. I could walk anywhere without being harassed by people. And that in itself is a comfort to me, you know. And as time goes on, people will recognize. People would appreciate, well, in fact, they start appreciating already, you know, because that facility we built in Grenville for basketball, that was a commitment I made to the Grenville sportsmen when we move away, when they moved the basketball court facility from the, what quote unquote, the dump site. I give that commitment to them that, look, you don't have to worry, I'm going to make sure. And that is basketball. That is basketball. I must make sure that that happened for basketball. Added to that, basketball in itself would have gotten a fair share during my tenureship. The revise of the Windward Islands Championship happened while I was the Minister for Sports. And the mats and the collapsible boards and everything, the collapsible thing, all that came in while I was from Minister for Sports. And that was my
right, because that was a question I wanted to ask you about the resuscitation of the Windward Islands basketball tournament as Minister of Sport.
Yes, so that that happened while I was you know, when I was Minister for Sports, and that again too was a commitment that I gave to the Basketball Association. I could recall them coming, Paul Roberts and I think it was Joman, and a couple of them came in, and I said to them, okay, this is what is going to happen. They tell me this is what they want me to do, or this is what they want. When I say me, meaning the ministry, this is what we want from the ministry, and everything that they wanted from the ministry became a reality. And there were things that they came for after, and I said to them, look, this was not part of what you requested. So then you have to find ways and means to deal with that. But what you requested from the ministry, here it is.
You know this guy here? His name is Hamlet Mark. He says Patrick Simmons is one of the good ones. You know this guy from St. Andrews, right?
Why FM?
Yes.
He's not trying to belittle anybody or trying to say, well, this one is a good one and this one is a bad one. It boils down to commitment and discipline. And you cannot hide from the people. You know? The people know where your heart is. You can't really hide. You can't really hide. Trust me, you can't really hide. Especially young people. They know. But sometimes they are influenced by others that, or they're influenced by things. They're influenced by things. So you can't really hide. So I'm not trying to make myself look as the good one. Like, added to that, when you have children, your passion will be different. Your passion will be different. My greatest achievement in life, thus far, is having the opportunity to be part of my children's life. And having a woman by my side that supported me with raising the children. So I see my children as the impetus and the catalyst for doing what I'm doing. So Tahira, Shakir, Jabari, Kwame, Coyote, I thank them for having me as their father. Yes. And that is my greatest achievement. Everything else, you know, being the principal assistant is another great achievement. You know, I'm very happy that God blessed me with the opportunity to have a family with these wonderful children that I have and a wonderful wife, and being the principal of the St. Andrews American Secondary School.
Okay. As Minister of Sports, I know the sports policy would have been one of the highlights of your tenure as Minister of Sports. But what else outside of the sports policy you would have pinpoint or you would like to pinpoint as major achievements of your tenure outside of the sports policy?
All right. The youth program the apprenticeship program that we implemented, because the youth program, the apprenticeship component of it, focused heavily on rural youth. And as a result, we had agriculture being a major component of it. So when Ashley a while ago spoke about the repair of the farm school, that was done by the Ministry of Youth, because in order to accommodate the young people that were going to be part of the youth program, re-agriculture, we had to do all the repairs in terms of the accommodation, the living quarters and so forth, and the lecture halls and the kitchen and everything like that, in order to facilitate them. So we had to do it, and we did it. So a lot of young people got an opportunity to go back to school, focus on agriculture. A couple of them did things outside, not only being involved in farming, as planting or reaping or so forth, but they got involved in other areas that was supportive structure for agriculture, for the agricultural system. Then the education enhancement program. The education enhancement program had its challenges, but we engaged a number of young people that left school for whatever reason, and at the end of the day, they ended up with no certification, no GC, no CXC subjects. And you know that in our culture and the way that the education system is organized, that plays a very important role. And I'm not saying that I endorse it, but that's the way it is. And they had the opportunity to go back and get involved in classes that give them the opportunity to sit the CXC and the GC and got subjects, and some of them went on to be nurses, some of them went on to be teachers and so forth. That again too was a major achievement. But this program itself, because so much comparison has been made what was happening before, and everybody was looking at it as in a light of giving a stipend, in other words, like a job, but it wasn't a job for us. It was serious about training, and from training you have transition. From transition you go into some way that you would be able to nurture what you have and implement what you learned. So it wasn't a job situation. So hence the reason why we couldn't accommodate 2,000 and 3,000 people. We had 1,500 as the most, I think, at any given time, because we had to find jobs for these people or find ways for them to create wealth and to put them in a better economic position. So the other program that facilitated and assisted in that was the program through the GDB. We gave a number of these young people grants and loans to assist them to facilitate their own business or businesses. So it wasn't by accident when a couple of them, they had their little boats and they were doing trips on the carronage over to Granans. They got assistance for that. Cosmetology, they got assistance for that. In fact, we had a number of them that were sent to cosmetology school, to learn the art of cosmetology. So a lot was done, but under the bridge.
Yeah. Well, we have some questions coming in. So I want to go to at least pay attention to some of the questions that are coming in. I think Grant, what has been done now for basketball in Grenville? Can you speak to that?
Okay. Well, I'm aware that something is happening right now. You see again, it's the same grassroots. So we have people like Dwight Gibbs, Jerry Sincere. It's the same grassroots people now that coming together and getting support from people in the diaspora that associated with St. Andrew. And they started a program during the August vacation, during the COVID, but August vacation, and they engaged a number of young people, young children in St. Andrew. I think they had some in Pearls, and they had some in Grenville. So these are the kind of grassroots programs that we need to continue to develop and to enhance. And people like Grant and others in the diaspora that are able to give support. Because at the end of the day, it's not what the government did. Because the government would only do, the government could only do such. But it's what the people would have organized themselves to do. And the support of those of you in the diaspora and the business community to give back to the community that supports them. Because people like Granty and so forth, they benefited a lot from what would have happened during that time when they played basketball, because Basketball at the time was basketball in terms of Grenville, St. George, St. John, St. Mark, because the community supported it. It was a community event. When we played basketball in Grenville, it was a real community, it was a village event, because you had Grenville, Central, you had River Lane, you had Trenchtown, and it was a community-based thing. So community people come out to support, and that is what we need. That is what Claudius George, I must make mention of Claudius George. Claudius George started a cricket program at Progress Park. He started off by getting 1 or 2 boys together and hitting. Then the whole community got involved in it. The whole community. Refreshment, uniforms, everything, balls, everything. The whole community, because they saw the benefit of it. So it didn't have nothing to do with the ministry or the government. It had to do with one individual that started and got community support. So that is the way we have to go. So,
okay, yeah. Yeah, and I'm seeing some comments regarding, I think it's called the, Dwight is saying that it's called the St. Andrew's Basketball Fraternity. The St. Andrew's Basketball Fraternity. Yeah, he's making reference to that. And I also, Donna Henry is also putting a link. So there's a Facebook page. So for those who interested, there's also a link that you can go on to on Facebook, St. Andrew's Basketball Fraternity, and you can get more information about that regarding thing. Let's go to Harold Paisadi. Is hello, Patrick. Grenada is a small island. Why haven't we been able to have all sports played in all parishes with same divisional tournaments, same age groups, leading to same divisional parish tournaments, then leading to national selection? This sounds like organizational development, doesn't it?
Of course it is. And that is what we need. That is what needs to happen. So
National Sports Council, Parish Sports Council.
Exactly. When you have this Parish Sports Council involved at that level, it's always easier to, through the National Council, to mandate that this is what we're going to do, and this is how it's going to play off. You know, and the participants, the athletes themselves, they have something to look forward to, because the council, the policy spoke to these national games. So in all the events, or all the all the disciplines would have led up to that big national game. So you have preliminaries taking part in the parishes for football, for cricket, for basketball, for track and field, and then you have this big finals at different times. You know, so it's just a different vision, and you cannot hold somebody ransom, or you cannot be upset with them because they're not seeing the vision clearly. You could only encourage. You have to encourage. So when the St. John's Sports Council continue to work and continue to show that they're making progress, probably that in itself might motivate those in authority now to see that this thing making sense. You have to encourage. Find ways and means to influence and encourage.
I warned you about the banter, and I think we spoke a bit about it in the start. From Cleve Deputy Patrick, my wife is a diehard SAS pillar shouter. I always tease her about the size of SAS athletes back then, accuse them of taking time off from their jobs to compete, and just so fight would start. I think at the start of the conversation.
You have a good website there. You get another SAS thing on
it. Yeah. There is Dunstan Alexander. What's about the University Project in Hope, which he was accused of having lands there? Well, I assume it's you there, refer to.
But I can speak here about this one now too, if you so like.
Please do.
All right. Now, the University of the West Indies, through the Ministry of Education, but through the government of Grenada at the time, the NDC administration, they were looking for lands, to purchase lands in order to build a campus, open campus in Grenada. And they came in and they had discussions with the Ministry of Education. They had a discussion with the Prime Minister and so forth. Then they started looking for lands. But the ministry was responsible in collaboration, I think it was the Ministry of Lands and so forth. The Ministry of Education in collaboration with the Ministry of Lands started looking for lands within the country to see where is the best possible site so that the university can be located. If my memory serves me right, I can recall 3 sites that came under review. The Maribo, around the farm school area up there, that was one site. Calivini was another site, and then Hope was the next site. So that's 3 sites. The university came and they visited this site. There were proponents within the government that wanted Maribo, and they gave the reasons why they wanted Maribo. There were others that wanted Calivini, and they gave the reasons why they wanted Calivini. It was the university that decided, after visiting all the sites, that they were going to move to, they wanted Hope. And that happened in 2000 and probably 2011, 2012, somewhere around there. Because I recall the official handing over ceremony and so forth. Now, during 2008, 2009, I bought some lands down at Hope. And thank God I did buy that lands. Because this is what actually sustaining me right now. This is what is sustaining me right now. Because that is where all the family is taking place. In Hope St. Andrew. It's a little distance away from the site for the campus. It's a little distance away, but it's within the same vicinity. And the university decided that they were going to ask the government for that particular site. And they gave the rationale, and the government considered. And they agreed that they were going to do that. They were going to give them, with other agreements and so forth. We don't get into details. Other agreements, what they were going to get in return and so forth and so on. So that was done. And then lo and behold, a couple years ago, the Prime Minister and some of his colleagues, they were in New York, and he made a point that there was corruption involved in the UE campus, and lands, people buy lands, and they sold it over to the government for the project. Peter David is not you, but Patrick Simmons. I mean, that is so far from the truth. It's so far from the truth. And as I keep saying, I said to the Prime Minister, the only thing I have going for me is my character. And I would not get involved in no level of corruption to something like that. Why I want to do that? Why would I want to do that? Why would I buy lands and sell it over to the government so that the government could do whatever to do with university? Why would I do that? I'm not involved in that. I'm not part of that. And in fact, the government never knew that I had lands down in it. The lands were bought from some developers that would have bought that land since in 1980 something, I think 87 or somewhere around there. During that time, I was in university studying in Pennsylvania, and I knew nothing about the connection I think I had with one of the developers. She knew, and she was an owner, so message would have passed from her to me, to the cabinet, because there was another cabinet member that had interest in the land, and I could recall whenever this land discussion started, he would gently rise and go outside and not participate in anything like that. And lo and behold, that just. But anyhow, I would not go any further because this thing is before the High Court. It's before the High Court. It's not.
My apologies.
This one is not.
Okay, my apologies. I sat back and I was listening, but then, as you said, it's before the High Court. My apologies, because I didn't know it was a matter before. So there's a legal issue regarding that. Okay.
And that's it. That's, you see, I usually get a lot of lips for that too. The way I operate. I mean, I don't have to jump and shout and say I take the Prime Minister to thing. I don't have to do that. We deal with the issues. and the issues are solved, then the public, John public know, fine, they know. If they know, it's fine, they know. You don't have to take or put no ranks on shoulder to see whether I do this or that. No. What needs to be in the public domain, we'll know. The public will know what needs not to be in the public domain, and things like that's the
Okay, so Mr. Dunstan Alexander, your question has been answered. So therefore, there is an issue, and Mr. Simmons gives some explanation as to the point he wants to, but as he indicated, it's something before the High Court, and he prefer not to go into much details. But as you indicated, it's lands you had bought prior to you even becoming, was it even before you became a minister?
No, I was a minister at the time. And you know something, the lands, I actually got this lands through a colleague that wanted to buy 5 acres of land. And the amount of lands that they had for sale was much more than 5. So he contacted me through the agent and asked me if I'm interested. And I said, okay, fine, I will go ahead. But God bless me with this lands too, because if I didn't have this lands right now, probably I may not be here in Grenada, or may I be somewhere else, or fighting to do something else. But sometimes you don't really have the vision,
Okay, and just for clarity, the land, the land is not the issue, the legal issue. The land is not the legal issue. It's something else regarding the land, because you're farming on the land, right?
Yeah, farming the land. But that land, based on what was said, is that I sold it to the government.
Oh, okay. So yeah.
The government bought it from me, and then they give it to UE. But this is the same land that I'm now working on, the same land I'm doing my farming on.
Oh, okay. While we wait for some more questions and comments coming in, the issue, I want you to go back, Mr. Simmons, on the issue of the policy, because I still think there
on the what?
The issue of the sports policy. The question would have asked in early as to if you could have provided at least, you would have mentioned probably 1 or 2, but I wanted to zero in on probably, as I said, at least 3 key points of the sports policy, at least 3 areas. I mean, off my head, I know the whole issue of incentives came up because the policy came after Kirani's victory in the World Championships in Daegu in 2011. So the whole issue of incentives, providing and a structure for incentives for national sportsmen and women also became part of the sports policy. But if you can speak to some other points, key points of this national sports policy.
All right. Now, you would recognize that we have a serious issue with archiving, keeping data, keeping records of achievement and participation of our national athletes. So the sports policy set to address that particular issue. So we'll have within the National Council, you'll have somebody or somebody is responsible for archiving all national athletes, all national events pertaining to sports, and keeping data and records on these events. So in other words, if somebody from outside or some organization, some university from outside wants to provide an opportunity of scholarship or so forth for one of our athletes, all that needs to happen is that all the records, all the data concerning that individual can be simply retrieved through the council and make available as an authentic piece of document coming from the National Sports Council to that university. Just like when you're getting your transcript. You know, in order for you to get a transcript from the university or the college that you attend, they won't send it to you directly, but they will send it to the institution or the institution that needs or make application for it. So just the same way too. So I believe too that in itself would have been a very critical development that would have assisted our athletes in having more opportunity based on this information being able to be transmitted from point A to point B. Because as it stands right now, I know that Naka and others, they put a lot of effort and energy into doing things like that. So they will be able to present to the universities and the schools and the organization that need these athletes with data, with solid data, that could enhance the opportunity. So that again, that in my opinion, seems to be a good, been a good thing to implement, or a good structure to implement. But the rewarding and incentive package, again, too, I think that is important, because you must have standards. Okay, Kirani went on to win the gold medal at the 2012 Olympic, and certain things were done. Okay, what if the next Olympic, next year, whenever, some Grenadian born again to win some major gold event or gold medal in an event? How are we going to treat with that? Would the government or the DA just decide, okay, we're going to do this like we did? What if the government not in a position to do as great as what was done before? Or what if they are in a position to do more than what was done before? So in other words, you set up that scheme where you would say specifically what is going to happen in the event that you win a gold medal, or in the event that you represent the West Indies team as a cricketer, or some other major event, or some other major occurrence. So you have this schedule, and you have the incentive and reward packages for the athletes, and not only for the athletes, but also for the coaches and other persons or other people that contribute during that phase for that output, because it's a national event. It's national recognition that is being given to Grenada because of the performance of these athletes. Now, somebody had to look out for the athletes. Somebody had to look out for sports. I think the same thing should happen with agriculture, fisheries. Same thing should be happening. You go to the Chelsea show and you keep winning. You put Grenada in the spotlight. What are the returns for you outside of getting the medal and being recognized as a member of the team? So we have to have rewards and incentive packages for good performance, and that in itself, I think, would encourage people to excel wheresoever they are.
Okay.
The NDC had set up a program too in the academic realm for athletes not athletes, but students that pass 8 or so CXC subjects. They said, okay, they're going to refund your exam fees, what you paid for the subject. So, things like that. That in itself would motivate people to do more and to try to excel, try to give up the best, because that is what we need. We need for people to be committed, to be disciplined, and to give up the best at all times, or if not at all times, at most times.
Yeah, and if I may just add, in support of that, there was also the whole issue of concessions on duties and taxes at departure points, and that's regarding in terms of the development of those sportsmen and women, development of interpersonal skills, including media relations, ensuring that when they are being interviewed, they can conduct proper interviews, etc. Counseling and guidance in financial management, especially those who moving on to the professional realms of sports, and designation and enforcement of standards of dress and approved attire for national teams, something standardized in terms of national representation. That's all. Most likely, I think the Jamaicans in particular, they do that. They have what they call a standardized national dress for whether it's football, basketball, no matter the sport, there is a standardized. And also the whole issue of the sports ambassadors, sort of orientation. It's not just you become a sports ambassador, but a whole orientation into your role as a sports ambassador for the nation. All these things were part of the sports policy. But let me go into some of the things coming up there now. Peter Bishop, during your stint as Minister of Sport, can you tell us your major achievement in Carriacou? Carriacou.
Yes, well, I must admit that I did visit Carriacou on a couple of occasions. We did some work with the Life for Sports. We did some work at the basketball facility in Petit Martinique, I think it was. We did some work there, and it took us just a matter of days. So then I made myself available to play basketball with the young people there. But our focus for Carriacou was more to do with the youth development. Youth development. We spend a lot more time with youth development in terms of, extending the program and the opportunities that were afforded to the Grenadian young people. The same thing would have happened to Carriacou. So the same level of engagement happened for Carriacou and Petit Martinique in terms of youth development. I took a personal interest in track and field with the schools of Carriacou participating in the intercall games in terms of accommodation and so forth. But that has been going on. But special as the minister, I took a special interest in making sure that they were comfortable during the time I served as minister. But I must confess that the bulk of the engagement and manifestation would have been for the youth program.
How you think the whole issue of providing those tax credits for and other fiscal incentives to the private sector would have worked out? Again, the whole implementation of the sports policy in its broadest sense had to do a lot with the financial resources. But you think it's possible that the government was and is in a position even now to provide these sort of incentives?
No. At this point in time, as the
no. Barring COVID. Sorry, barring COVID.
Right. Yes. It's highly possible. It's possible because the government is responsible for through the customs and so forth in terms of levying the taxes on importers and the business community. So you can meet with the business community and work out some strategy or some policy that will clearly state if you give sponsorship to XYZ, you'll have tax deduction on XYZ. Just like with the land tax. The government, I know we had a policy that if you pay before a particular time, then you get exempt from, or you get deduction much percent or so. So it's I cannot foresee any major problem. It's just the will, the political will to do it and to make it happen. Because the business community has nothing to lose in terms of that. Because if they get in tax break, they could easily give back to the community, and I know most of them will love to do it. They will love to do it. So you have athletes that need time off, and they get time off, they won't get paid. So you work out something that when they get the time off, either the government will make something to be worked out. Government make the payments to them through the business, or the business make the payment, and then they get some tax break for making payments for the athlete that need the support because they have to represent the country.
Yeah, because I think both netball and football in particular, they would have suffered because in terms of getting their representatives to train, in some cases, some of them had to give up training for fear of losing their jobs. I know that for sure in netball, where sometimes even the president, in both football and netball, by the way, would have had to intervene, meet directly with the various workplaces and see if they can reach a compromise for the person to train as a national, and not just train, in some cases even to represent in terms of traveling. So they would have trained, and then to get the time to represent Grenada, there was issues regarding that. But we dealt a lot in terms of the structure. Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
No, just that there should be a national policy for that. So the Cricket Association or the Basketball Association or the Athletics Association shouldn't have to go to the business place to negotiate that. There should be a policy that the business community will be well aware of, and through the Ministry of Finance, whatever details that need to be worked out can be worked out, because it's a sector, you know. It's the sporting sector that needs support and need encouragement, just like how tourism needs support and encouragement, or the education sector needs support and encouragement.
Yeah, and I think folks should really get their hands on the sports policy, well, what it is now, even though it's limited to an extent. But I do have a copy, and as I said, not just a copy, but I have notes as well from consultations, you know, and it was real in depth back then, 10 years ago, yeah, but, you know, very much alive in terms of my mind and where I could have find some of the notes. But it's important because we covered a lot in terms of the structure of the sports policy. But when we go into the whole nitty-gritty of some of the things, and I think it will answer the questions by Margaret and others earlier regarding what are some of the key points of the policy that will also benefit the sportsmen and women, because there's also the issue of and which I think is very important, the provision of economic support to athletes, especially the needy ones, who would have represented Grenada consistently for a minimum of 10 years at the national senior level. I mean, we have some of the who would have represented Grenada for their lifetime. You know, they started representing Grenada at a very early age, 16, 17, and way until they retired. And, you know, unfortunately, they're basically destitute, you know. And I think the policy as it relates to that and should have been implemented would have dealt with that as well. And one other, the issue of injury, provision of compulsory injury-related insurance of all athletes selected for national representation, and also encouraging national federations to provide injury-related insurance for all their participants. Very important part of the sports policy. And I think as Grenadians, and especially those who are enthusiasts involved in sports some way or the other, either as a participant, an official, or just an enthusiast, you should try to get yourself a copy of the sports policy. If you want, you can just shoot me an email, mbascom@gmail.com, and I can send you original as well as current, and you can, you know, see for yourself, and probably if you figure you can make some contributions to the Ministry of Sports by way of, you know, your input, please feel free to do that. But I think it's important that you get some involvement, and you know, people get to understand the sports policy in its greatest form. Sorry, yeah, go ahead before I get back to the question.
I recall in the 1980s when I played football for Trenchtown, each member of the team of the football team, each member of the football team were insured. We had insurance policy. The person that managed and sponsored, together with the same Mr. Donald, they ensured that every member of the team, of the club, had insurance policy to cover you for the entire football season. Yeah, so it's not something so difficult to do. It can be done.
Yeah, I recall that Cleve, that point he was making about the safety net, about you know, for especially those who would have been off their time. Mr. Simmons, as Minister of Sports, then why didn't you and your government, and in bracket they have NDC, light up and upgrade the Progress Park in St. Andrew, knowing it's the best park around for sports? Question.
That's simple to answer. Very simple to answer. We had consultation on which field should be lit in St. Andrew. Unanimously decided that Victoria Park should be the field that we should light first. And the rationale behind it is that, look, Progress Park is one of the best playing fields we have in the country right now. Progress Park needs to be treated as the national stadium in terms of the lighting facility. It would have been highly impossible and impractical for us to light Progress Park, taking into consideration the financial inputs that was what actually needed. That's one. Secondly, Progress Park at that time, in our view, was unfinished work. Because where they have right now the building that primary or preschool in the back of the Progress Park there, that area in itself was actually earmarked for football and track and field. So we are going to have that entire area. The proposal was a proposal was actually done, and it was submitted to CBN, that the Canadian Bank note, through the law too. So we had some discussions. Things didn't really work out the way that we thought it was going to work out, but at least that area there was actually earmarked for it. So with that development, with the expansion of development, then we would have been able to facilitate and light Progress Park the way that it should be lit. So Progress Park you can't treat Progress Park as how you treat Grenville, because I think it lighting up, like the original cost for lighting Grenville after the survey was done by the Trinidad company, it came up to $1.5 million. $1.5 million. And through same people again within the community had discussions with them, and they pointed out that we cannot go ahead, we can't go forward with lighting Victoria Park for all this amount of monies. So we went back and we negotiated, and we worked out something with a local contractor, and hence the reason why we were able to get Victoria Park up and running in terms of the light. That came up to I think under $500,000. So it would have been injustice. It would have been high injustice to treat Progress Park the way that we treated Victoria Park in terms of lighting. Progress Park needed to have the towers, just like the National Stadium, because of its size and because of its importance at the time, cricket. So hence the reason why Progress Park was never, well, it was considered, but we couldn't go forward with it. But I think we should look at the other side and give the NDC credit for being able to light 4 playing fields within 4.5 years after it was promised how many years ago. But we came forward because we had the commitment, we had the political will, we had the discipline to make it happen.
There's well, not so much a question, but I believe they wanted you to comment on sports tourism regarding the cricket academy and then sports scholarships. It's sort of vague, but and it's not on the feed, but the whole issue of sports tourism. I'm just trying to understand what's the issue regarding sports tourism, but I don't know if there's something about sports tourism you would like to speak about. And I saw Cricket Academy in bracket on that, as well as scholarships. It's sort of vague, but
yeah. But sports tourism, the sports policy address sports tourism also, because that is an area that needs to be developed and to really need to take out to be promoted, because the tourism in itself, the sports tourism in itself, goes beyond our shows. It goes beyond our shows, but it involves the majority of the stakeholders, because the athletes need to be part of it, the sponsors need to be part of it, and most of all, the government needs to be part of it, because the policy of the government is what is going to promote it. So in the past, we had things happening abstractly, because remember they had the visitors from this cricketers coming from England that played. Now that in itself needed to be strengthened and needed to be part of the policy, to say, okay, this is what is going to happen and how it's going to happen. But that never really took off under us. So it's, I can't really say much, because we never really put much effort and emphasis into that. We were more concentrated on developing what we have here locally, and then later on, when we reach to the point where other things can be put into place, we will put into place so that we'll be able to deal with that at a more professional level. But sports tourism is important, very important.
Your time as Minister of Sport, what arrangements, preparations, whatever was done in terms of rebuilding the national stadium at the time?
Yes, Mike. That one is under the belt.
Well, I mean, I know the whole issue of stadium has been in the manifestos of various political parties. So I want to know then why it wasn't fulfilled. You know.
I'm going to explain. All right. Now, we engaged in a cabinet discussion, and I'm going to call some names too. In a cabinet discussion, it was recommended by Glenn Noel that we should engage the Chinese to ask for some of the monies that they have towards the housing project be given to the government to assist with the refurbishment of the national stadium.
I hope these comments don't turn out to be too controversial. I just wanted to. You said you call it names. Fair enough. Well, okay, fair enough. Go ahead. The floor is yours.
It was well supported by the Minister for Finance, and it was well supported by the Prime Minister, and then the Minister for Sports. So that in itself kind of spurred the discussion, and then the cabinet, Glennis had supported it too. So that spurred the discussion, and then we agreed collectively that should happen, and the cabinet supported it. So we went ahead with it, with myself and Naz being the two leaders. So all the necessary details that needed to be worked up from the Ministry of Finance side was actually done by the Minister of Finance at the time. Then what needed to be done on the sports side was worked out by myself, together with ministry, PS, and coordinator of sports. Two people were very much involved, integrally involved. All right. The drawings and everything like that were done. The signing was locally. We did some signing, and then the document was actually made available through Foreign Affairs now for the execution. That is the final signing that a team need to go to China to do the signing. To be honest, I was not prepared to go to China at that time. It was around December of that year. I was not prepared to go to China at that time. For whatever reason, I can't recall what it was. However, the coordinator of sports went, and whatever signing that needed to be done in regard to that, it was done. And the project should have started not long after that. But you know what happened? Election came, we lost the election. It took the administration, the current administration, approximately a year and a half to get the project going. And you need to ask yourself the question, why it took such a short period of time in order to get a project of that magnitude moving? And the simple answer for that is that all the preliminary work that needed to be done was actually done by the NDC administration. Every single thing. It's just a matter now of implementing. Just a matter of implementation. And it so happened that the government changed. And it happened under the present administration. And I'm not here to fight to say that I was responsible for doing that. I consider that to be water under the bridge, and the benefactors or the beneficiaries, they benefited. the nation, and in particular the athletes. So the records will show that the refurbishment was done under the NNP administration. And I okay with that because it was done under their administration. But the record should also reflect too that it took them that short period of time in order to do it. And the reason why it took that short period of time is because the preliminary work was actually done under the former administration, which would have been the NBC. But again, too, it's water under the bridge. Let's move on. We have to move on.
Yeah, and it's also an indication of that government is continuity, right? So
exactly.
So whatever it is, whether you start, someone has to end. But by way of clarification, is the current structure itself and design, was that what was actually agreed on with the Chinese initially in the initial plans?
Well, we had made some recommendations. I'll tell you some of the recommendations we made to the Chinese in connection with the stadium. First of all, we recommended that it shouldn't be more than 10,000. The seating capacity should not be more than 10,000. Because there's a formula of 10% the population to accommodate the construction of a stadium. 10% of the population. So we estimated that the population of Grenada was about 100,000, so then the maximum should be 10,000. Added to that, we also recommended that they should put approximately 6,000 to 7,000 as permanent sitting, and the balance have as temporary sitting. And the rationale for that is that we could use that temporary sitting to facilitate other activities outside of what happens at the stadium. So, for example, Carnival. Instead of, because you remember there was a year that we brought in bleachers and things from Trinidad. The NDC brought in bleachers from Trinidad through that time would have been Senator Gill as Minister for Culture. Brought in bleachers. So we could have alleviated that problem of having to source bleachers and things outside. So we'll have the bleachers right here. That would have been part of the stadium, aluminum bleachers, but the Chinese didn't accept that. So that was actually turned on. But the majority of, probably there were changes here and there. But I have the original draft. I still have a copy of it because a copy was given to me by the Chinese. So I still have that. But things actually changed. Some of the things changed. Yeah, some of what was recommended changed, and some of them they did not implement. Period.
Okay. Grantee is asking, what would you say were your top 3 achievements as a minister outside of the sports policy draft?
Grantee, you're sure it's minister or MP? Or that you sure it's minister or MP? Because the minister's role is different to that of the MP's role. Because when Grantee and I'm speaking now, they want to know what I did for St. Andrew, what I did for St. Andrew Southeast, what I did for Grenville. But anyhow, as minister, I think the lighting of the playing field, as the minister for sports, the lighting of the playing field, I think was a remarkable achievement, and it was something that I really pushed very hard. But the ministry pushed very hard to make it happen because we came up against the odds. I remember one person laughed and tell me the only light they're getting in any playing field before we leave government, it will be moonlight. So that's how, because the promise was made so many. The promise was made so many times. Yeah. All right. So I think that was a remarkable achievement. But I had the privilege and the opportunity to sit as the Minister for Sports when Grenada won its first gold medal at the Olympic Games. Not only did I have the opportunity to be the Minister for Sports, but I also had the opportunity to witness that event and to witness Kirani James winning that gold medal. And I think that is remarkable. That is very humbling. It's a humble experience. And I don't know how many other ministers would have that opportunity. I was placed there at the right time to witness and to experience that.
Mhm.
And as I had to point it out a couple of years ago, I stayed with Mr. Julian. He didn't cost the government 1 cent for accommodation. I stayed with my good brother, Mr. Julian, both myself and Barbara. So that was remarkable. Then the other achievement, not in terms of size or anything like that, but in terms of the impact and 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 and, and living up to our promise, the construction of the basketball facility in Grenville. You know, it was something that was promised to the young people by myself as the MP, and I really work hard together with the other ministry officials and good support from Ian Thomas to make it happen. So that in itself brings some level of fulfillment and achievement because of the impact it had on the community. So that thing. And then the implementation of the national sports councils.
Okay, but
Of the writing of the policy is one, but the implementation of the councils, remarkable achievement.
on the flip side, what would you have said you would have preferred to do better, or you wish could have been done better, whether as Minister of Sports or even as the government of the day regarding sports?
Yes, there are a lot of things that probably I could have done better. But again, to doing it is like playing politics. Playing politics. But in retrospect, probably for political survival, if he had done that way, probably it could have been a greater chance. The lighting of the Victoria Park. I remember in organizing to light the playing field. I told the PS at the time that we were going to light Victoria Park. Her interpretation was we're going to light Victoria. We're going to light Victoria, Alston George Park. And her interpretation was we're lighting Victoria Park because everybody expected me to light Victoria Park at that time. And that is where I'm from. But my thing was at the time was, look, nothing much going on for the parish of St. Mark. And if we as a government decided to do something to motivate the young people, to motivate the community, and at the same time try to bring some level of hope that the lighting of the Victoria Park, of St. George Park in Victoria, would have been the best move. And it turned out, it did happen, but I came under a lot of pressure and a lot of, ridicule from the people of St. Andrews for lighting Victoria at St. George Park before lighting Victoria Park. And in fact, it was even, I never had the opportunity to turn on the lights. All the work was done, but the lights were actually turned on by the incoming MP of the other party. And the perception was this is actually the government of the day that did the Victoria Park, which was far from the truth. Yeah, so that in itself, sometimes you have to weigh for your own political survival, you have to weigh the quote unquote the politics of what is being done on opposed to what should be done in terms of you're looking at it from more kind of moralistic, more kind of community involvement and development perspective. Yes, so that is one area that's probably if I had the opportunity, I'd have done it. If I know what I know now, probably I might have done it differently. Maybe, still not to 100%. Maybe I might have done it differently. Then making promises. You have to make promises, but you must make promises within a particular context and making sure that it's feasible. So not just talking talking, but you must make promises that is very feasible. Because at the end of the day, if you cannot deliver on the promises that you make, the people will lose confidence in you. They will lose confidence in you, and they will see you as being what they expect or anticipate that you should be when you're involved in the political field. So that is something again I will probably look at from a different perspective.
Talking about the political field. Mr. Simmons, direct question to you from Michael Bascom. Do you still have political aspirations? Do you still intend to be directly involved in politics going forward?
Okay, let me answer that question frankly. I still remain a member of the National Democratic Congress. I still will support. I'm still a firm supporter of the policies of the National Democratic Congress. I still walk along with the National Democratic Congress. It is not my intention, not my desire, not my will to be in the forefront of the party as a candidate. And I have come to that conclusion after the last general election. So that is where I stand right now. I'll do whatever I can to assist with the development of the organization, because I think they represent something different to what we currently have. And I believe in the ideals and the philosophy of the party. So I'll walk along with them. But I cannot see myself in the forefront, as a candidate. And in fact, when you reach certain when you reach a certain stage to a certain place in your life, you have to make way for others to do what they've been called to do. I remember I got a lot of licks for making a statement to that effect years ago. But as temporary custodians of things, you must know when to out your light. And if you have wisdom, you will know. If you work with wisdom, you will know when to speak and when to shut up.
So, what would you say are some of the issues or reasons? Probably, I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, would you say family? I mean, what are some of the issues that would drive you to such a decision?
What's going? You went in, right? You went in reluctantly, but you understand the importance of going. You see the reason why you should go and why you should make the ultimate sacrifice. You see it. So you adhere. You adhere and you committed yourself to it. All right. You were successful. You won narrowly. You went back the second time. The people told you collectively that they don't think they want you to represent them again. Because that is what the outcome of the election would have stated. You went back the third time. Basically, they tell you the same thing again in a more forceful way. No, that is actually sending a message. That is sending a message. That's sending a clear message. So you have to now start redefining the cause and redefining what contribution you can make to further the cause. And I've concluded that I could still make a contribution right where I am, doing what I'm doing, extending in certain areas, but not having to be as a candidate. So I've reached that decision, and I pass it on to those who I need to pass it on to, and they give me their support. So that is where I am right now.
Okay, and were you really? I'm just staying on the. I didn't mean to be too involved in the politics, but as a former sports minister and member of parliament, were you surprised of the results of the last two elections? Were you surprised?
Yes, to a certain extent, yes. There are certain seats that that I thought we were going to win, but having been surprised, I accepted them. Surprised, but I've accepted because I had to accept in order to move on with my own life. You cannot. It's like grieving. The longer you're in denial, is the longer the grief period. So you accept and you move on. So that is my whole philosophy. I accepted. What is my next move? Next move is that I should travel. The next move I should run my own little business, and you consider a number of different things. But acceptance is probably the single most critical thing you can do in order to come out of the dilemma and the what actually transpired because of the general election. So whether if you have questions or not, you still have to accept, because having questions will not change the current or the present situation. You will be out of office, and now that you're out of office, what it is that you're going to do. And just to sound the alarm bell to those that are interested in getting involved, it's good to serve, and you must be prepared to serve. But I want you to also know that it's an ultimate sacrifice that you're making, and with this sacrifice comes a lot of criticism. And some of the criticisms, in my opinion, some of them are very unjust, but you have to learn to live with it. You have to learn to live with it. Because as a principal, the criticism you will get as a principal is so much different to what you will get when you're involved in the political arena. The criticism you will get as a coach is so much different to what you will get in the political arena. So in other words, you have to have a mindset, and you must not go into the mindset. You must come in with the mindset. So if you're not aware of how the party politics operate, you must endeavor to do so before you get yourself fully committed to it. Because the life inside of politics is different to the life in the education sector. It's different to the life in the sport. As for sports as far as I'm concerned right now, is the only sector that is capable internationally, locally, regionally, to bring politicians together. Sports. So sports is a very unique sector, and it has unique capability in bringing people together. Sports and music, in bringing people together. So you have to understand what this party politics is all about before you get. I remember years ago, Basdeo Pandey made a statement to one of his MPs, Gillian Lucky. He told her that politics have a morality of its own. And I struggled with that, because in my opinion, morality is morality. Being able to figure out what is right from what is wrong. And, after being involved and looking back, I'm not saying that my view on morality has changed, because I still believe morality is morality, but it's something that you need to look at and consider, while being involved in politics. Because it seems to me that the things that you think is not normal could be very normal in the political realm.
Mm-hmm. And my final question to you in the political ring, in our sports section, before we return to sports to wrap up, is that, do you think that the NDC as the National Democratic Congress, which you say you will still support, is still a viable opposition and still a viable government in waiting?
Yes, I think so. I believe that the NDC still has the capacity to be a very viable option for what we now have. Nonetheless, I also believe too that there are a lot of changes that need to be made. Politics is about people and embracing people. So you cannot be exclusive. You have to be inclusive. So in other words, you must embrace everyone that comes in your path. Anyone that traverses your path, you must be prepared to embrace them. Now, I categorize different levels of embracement. You have those that you will hug extremely tight. Even if COVID is around, you will still hug them tight. You have those that you will give a shake hand. You have those that you will acknowledge them by giving a wave. You have those that you will acknowledge by just making some little gesture. But the bottom line is that you have everybody seeing that you're prepared to engage. You know, everybody must see that you're prepared to engage. And in so doing, you will be able to draw more people, or greater numbers on your side. Because that is what it boils down to. And we must also remember that every tongue, every Gnet have their followers. He or she has their followers. No matter how tiny it is, the followers are there. So you need to attract them. You need to attract them. And I also shared too that honesty still remains a very important policy. You have to be honest with those that you choose to represent, and the NDC will have to continue doing that, notwithstanding that, you know, we feel that this person should have been a priest and not a politician, and who this person feel that you can't do this, and you have to be honest and be yourself with the people. So I still foresee that NDC making some changes, some drastic changes. When I talk about changes, I'm not talking about moving persons or people from one position to another position, but I'm talking about having new people, dynamic people in the fold. And I know that there are a lot of people outside who want to be part of the process, but they're waiting to see something happen before they put themselves together, or put themselves in the forefront, or put themselves as part of the organization. But you have to look at it from the other angle, or from a different perspective. You must make yourself available. You must be part of it in order to make things happen. So in other words, you're being proactive.
I still believe you wanted to say something more direct. You don't want. You're still trying to be a bit diplomatic in terms of probably you wanted to say a renewed party, fresh faces, something to that effect. But I take it as
No,
with that little smile.
I said exactly what I wanted to say.
Oh, okay, all right, all right. Well, heading back to the sports as we get ready to wrap up now. Last year, the teachers in Grenada started their action. Well, it started even late 2018. I think it went into 2019. And it affected, in a larger part, sports, because, sports in Grenada is school-based, basically school-based. So that once, outside of probably the GFA, all the other sports on the larger part, on the national level, is basically school-based. And the teachers took action, and which affected sports. I think, if I'm not mistaken, that you gave support to the teachers, and then probably as a former teacher and principal yourself, you still agreed that, or you still of the view that the action taken by the teachers was justifiable?
Yes, I think so, because you see, you cannot have people that are responsible for coaching, people that are responsible for managing, and people that are responsible for teaching and securing your children. You cannot have them in a position where they are uncomfortable. You would not get the best from them. You cannot have them in a position where they're feeling compromised. You would never get the best from them. So we must have some level of interaction and some exchange that will put the teachers, who are also the coaches, who are also the custodians, who are also the managers, you must have them in a position where they feel comfortable and are prepared to take care of the nation's children. So if we cannot reach to that point, then things will not happen and happen in a positive way. So it's imperative that we strike a common ground. There must be a common ground. And not try to, the policymakers must not try to manipulate the system so that they could have what they think they want to implement outside of the major stakeholders, which are the parents and the teachers. Because we saw the fiasco. We saw what happened the last time around with that. The teachers are, when it comes to our young people, when it comes to students, the teachers, the principals are major stakeholders. They are major players in making things happen. And the school system in itself is the bedrock, the foundation for sports development in Grenada. We know we have community sports and so forth, but if you look at it, the people that are actually involved and involved in a real deep manner are the teachers and the students. So don't think you can escape them.
But for argument's sake, sports ended up a major casualty in all of that.
Of course, yes, that's true. I didn't like to see what happened, especially with the intercall, with the football. I didn't like to see what happened, but I guess that was a necessity at the point in time, because there are students that will, 10 years from now, there are students that would probably, student athletes that miss that opportunity, and they may never get another opportunity, and they will be able to talk about that in the next 10 years, next 5 years, So that was, it was a difficult period. It was a challenging period, but through struggles, things that will happen.
All right. As we get ready to wrap up, Mr. Simmons, it has been quite, almost 2.5 hours chatting with you. I guess as much we didn't get to, well, if probably we might just spend the next few minutes speaking about the, what's about Mr. Julian? When last you spoke to Mr. Julian? It's Bayi, right? Oh, well, I think we as we getting ready to wrap up, we have a little problem with Mr. Simmons. I think his connection is frozen, but I was trying to get about Mr. Julian and others. But it's interesting that Mr. Simmons is speaking, because sometime in the coming weeks we will be featuring St. Andrew, big parish. They would have made a very useful contribution to sports in Grenada. When you think about football, you think about cricket, you think about basketball, you think about athletics. It has been the big parish, as we say it, and they would have made their contributions by and large in terms of the development of sports in Grenada. And we'll be talking to Mr. Peter Blair. We'll also be speaking to hopefully Mr. Claudius George, but we'll be speaking to some of the stalwarts of sports in terms of administration and otherwise in the big parish in the next coming weeks. But I was asking you, Mr. Simmons, about Mr. Julian.
Yes. I'm in contact with him. We speak on a very regular basis. And I was saying to you that I noticed he called me last night, but unfortunately, well, I didn't have the phone with me. But when I returned, to WhatsApp, I realized he called. But I didn't get back in contact with him yet. But we are in contact.
Okay. Well, good to know. Good to know. And and as I indicated, and while you were reconnecting there, the contributions made by some of the living stalwarts of St. Andrew. Some of them I can recall their names, but obviously those who we can recall vividly in terms of providing the information, in terms of the media standpoint. I speak of Peter Blair, Claudius George, and others. They would have made their contribution, and hopefully
Yes.
they'll be able to share their knowledge of with us
Yes.
in the coming weeks. But what you can share with us within the last few minutes regarding some of the stalwarts of sports in the parish?
Well, there a lot of people come to mind. Evelyn Frederick.
Yeah, the late Evelyn,
Cricket.
right? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Cricket, football, and also primary school sport. Because he was instrumental together with Kingston Forrester and others in organizing the St. Andrews primary school sports. Claudius George. Claudius is a living legend in terms of cricket and football, because he was the president of the St. Andrews Football League at one time. He was the president of the St. Andrews Cricket League at one time. And then, he played a very pivotal role in playing fields up to standard to facilitate both regional and local competitions. Yes. There are others. Let me see who. See off the bat. Peter Blair.
Yeah, Peter Blair. And while you're thinking about that too, it dawned on me some time ago that we have not been featuring that many women. So I don't know if in your recollection in the big parish, whether there are any women that you can think of who would have made contribution to sports in the parish as well.
Of course, yes. There are a number of ladies that I can recall, especially during the early times. Because I have a sister that migrated to Canada too, and she was very instrumental in organizing the Rovers, because there were two main clubs in Grenville, Grenville, Rovers and Ebony. And she played a very pivotal role in organizing of Rovers and Ebony. Then you also have Brenda McNeely. She too I think she was a national athlete too, a national netballer, and she made a great contribution. Then in recent times we have the Smith sisters, Jacqueline and Christine. We also have there is this Dale. Dale's a teacher at the one of the primary schools again too. She plays a very, very important role in organizing primary school sports in St. Andrew. So we have a number of ladies that made good contribution, both in organizing and coaching and in sponsorship. Somebody like Pauline Andrew, again too, must come to mind. Pauline Andrew played a very big role in sponsoring sporting organization and thing in the parish, especially for basketball and football. So
yeah, and that's why, and I'm saying that too because it come to mind the whole issue of the parish sports councils, because that is where probably the parish sports councils would have been able to recognize these people in the various communities. It's not a task that we should be dependent on the Ministry of Sports of government at all times to do such. But these are things that the Parish Sports Council, for example, can do. In the Parish St. Andrews Parish Sports Council, and obviously they will have connection with the people from the various villages, communities who are doing that sort of the work in the trenches, and recognizing them and working with them to ensure the development of sports. So I'm glad you mentioning names, and I'm certain there will be a lot of names that probably even after the program you'll be saying, "Oh, I forgot this name. I forgot that."
Oscar Andel.
Yeah.
These are tremendous contribution.
Yeah. Yes. And St. Andrews, as you will agree, would have played its part in terms of the development. Well, in terms of sports and its development to Grenada, produced a number of national, cricketers, footballers. When you talk about the Thomas, should I say the Thomas brothers? Well, Batai and
Quick.
Right.
Evelyn is one too. Yeah,
From Evelyn go all the way down to Denison and and others.
yeah.
Yeah. So they would have played football and cricket.
Ronnie Allard. Ronnie Allard is a very controversial man, but he made his contribution.
That's a name I forgot. Ronnie Allard, Ronnie Allard, Peter Blair, and Claudius George in that sort of that sort of circle. No, oh, and then there's in fact, Vida is just telling about Yvette Sinak. That's a name for so many. They would have played their part in terms of the development of sports in the parish, and it would be interesting that at some stage, and I'm glad Vida made mention of that, because that is where sometimes, if these communities can come together and make recommendations and things, because they do ask sometimes for recommendations for people to be recognized, especially those who are volunteers, and if they can do that, it's difficult for probably the Olympic Committee or the Athletics Association or whatever to just choose someone. Sometimes they may be forced to do it, but if I can see, if you make proper representation and make a submission, that they will neglect it, and that would be something that they can look at in terms of recognizing the people in the parishes. We can't wait until they leave us to start talking about what they have achieved. We have to start doing it now.
Yes. Yes. It's important. It's important
Yes.
to recognize that, and we move and make sure that things like that happen. Because we wait too long to give people the recognition for what they would have done, especially when it comes to community. When it comes to community. Because when it nationally, most time people are seeing nationally, but when it comes to community, and that is the bedrock, because it starts in the community. So you need to.
And I still believe, and that's just my personal belief, that there should be something for Aline Francisque in the parish of St. Andrews, whether it's in Grenville or somewhere, that people will recognize that Aline Francisque not only represented Grenada, but he also represented, he's from the parish, and he did something proud, and he carried the flag high, and is one of probably the most celebrated in terms of modern heroes of the parish of St. Andrew, and I still believe that despite we have the Aline Francisque roundabout that we don't hear much about, that there should be something of significance in the parish, whether it's in Grenville, whether it's from wherever he's from, or wherever, once it's in St. Andrew, that can recognize his contribution to the parish. I don't know what you think about it.
Yeah, I support that too. And the same thing with Eugene Liquish. Eugene Liquish is somebody that gone under the radar, even when I was Minister for Sports. Because Eugene Liquish did make a very valuable contribution to, as somebody that went to the Olympic and represent Grenada in terms of the long jump. And in fact, he still holds the national record for the long jump. I think it's 8.09 meters. Yes. So Eugene Liquish is, and in fact, I believe Eugene Liquish. Yes. I usually throw that thing in my mind.
You sure Wayne Maxwin did?
No, Will Maxwin also, yeah.
I'm wondering whether Wayne would have eclipsed that long jump record, but Eugene was exceptional talent.
No, Eugene Liquish. I think Eugene Liquish had that record.
Okay.
Yeah, but you could double check it.
Yeah, we could always double check it. But the point you're making, and the point we are agreeing on, is that the talent that came from that parish of St. Andrew, and I'm talking about all-round sporting talents. We're not talking cards and dominoes and things like that. So we're talking about national representation, even at the level of the Carifta Games. There isn't a national team that would travel in terms of track and field that probably would not have someone coming from the parish of St. Andrew. And I think they need to take a bow for that. Some names coming to mind there. Stanky Sekou, Ulrich Schoon. Someone talk about Nigel Jones, Clint Williams. Come on. These are guys, and I'm sure Vida will remember these guys. They are like our children, you know. Nigel Jones, Clint Williams, you know, talent, eh? I'm talking about that, you know. Some very important contribution made by the and now that we're getting ready to wrap up the program, all this is just flowing in terms of the contribution made by the those folks. And I'm certain that when the Claudius George and Peter Blair and these guys come up, they will be sharing with us in terms of football and cricket and these sort of things like that. So wow, Calvin is putting quite a lot in my mind now. Selwyn Smith,
Yes.
yeah, Dylan Felix,
Dylan,
yeah,
Dylan,
yeah,
400.
yeah,
But you know,
400.
I think the most talented athlete, I believe, that's my opinion, in terms of St. Andrews, is a guy they call Gilbert. They call him
That
Gilbert.
is that the 800-meter runner?
No,
No,
he's
it's
a
not.
high
No.
jump.
Oh, high
He
jumper.
was
No, I get him mixed up with the other guy.
Kaibo.
Yeah.
Kaibo. He was a 800. He was a high jumper, and Kaibo is probably the most talented. Himself and Eugene, I have them as the two most talented St. Andrews athletes. But I still give Kaibo the edge because Kaibo was good at football. He was good at basketball. He was good in track and field. Kaibo was the guy that they took after he came. He was passing through St. George's. They went same Jericho and were jumping for, I think it was from Mexico. They won some games in Mexico, and where Jericho and stopped, he jumped it with his long pants on. They picked him one time together with Sergeant. I think it was Sergeant. What's Sergeant again? Right? That went with him in Mexico. You remember that sergeant that was involved in track and field? He died a couple of years ago. Can't recall his.
Yes, Dixon.
Gibbs, Sergeant Gibbs.
Yeah. Gibbs, yeah.
Gibbs, yeah.
Yeah. He was involved in I think was in the long distance and thing like he used to be in the long distance and thing like that. So yeah.
Yes,
But, you're right. And then you know, I saw the name Selwyn Smith came up a short while ago because if we recall, I think he had the record for once in terms of the winning the most medals in terms of javelin for Grenada at the Carifta Games. And I think he would have gone on to the CAC to an extent, but for every time he participated at the Carifta Games, he won a gold medal, not silver, not bronze. You know, we had Selwyn, and there were some others there because then you had the Modest, for example. You know,
Colin Peters did well too at the Carifta
yeah,
Games.
we had Colin Peters, we had the Fullerton. I mean, they were, and by the way, I saw a lot of names of males. You know, equally there were women who participated, represented, and won medals as well. You know, yes, it did say Trevor Modest and Mike Modest, Emron Gibbs, that is the name. Yeah,
Randy Lewis.
Randy Lewis. You know, how can we forget Randy Lewis? You know, I mean, it's unimaginable, I should say. You know, to think about the contribution, and that is why I'm saying we throwing out names, but we need to document and archive these achievements, and that's only St. Andrews because of course St. Patrick and St. David can probably say the same. Yes, that's the name I was looking for. Thanks, Calvin. This is the name I was actually looking for. Carol Evans.
Carol Evans, yeah.
Carol Evans was that name I was looking for. Yeah, Carol Evans. And then somebody just put Kendall Simon. Okay, well, your son, Kendall Simon. Kendall was, you know, phenomenal in terms of even the longest. Yeah, it was exceptional. You know, we can go on just you know, putting on names after names. So Sass actually was at the Penn Relays as well. Okay, yeah. So it's important that we, you know, document these things. But the names will keep coming in, and I want you to comment on the issue finally, Sir Simmons. horse racing in the parish of St. Andrew. Do you think that we still have an appetite? We have the infrastructure and whatever it takes to reintroduce horse racing in Grenada and particularly in the Simon St. Andrews area?
The appetite is still there, and the impact it could have a good economic impact, I believe. Now the Simon area, I can't, because I realized that they did some fencing up there, and I know they established a community there too. And then on the other side we have the GIDC. So in terms of the space available, I cannot say exactly what space is available now, but that is something that needs to be investigated. But I think that should be in the hands of the private sector. That should be. I don't believe that the government should be pushing to restart this horse racing. But I think the private sector. That's something for the private sector. Just like the carry.
But what you think? What's your view?
I'll support.
You support?
Yeah, I'll support.
And you do think we do have, as you say, the appetite? Because I find I'm hearing a lot of folks talking about, horse racing and things like that.
The appetite. All you need to do is to sport, bring a catalyst to whet the appetite, and then we'll see what will happen. Because now we're talking not only Grenada, we're talking about Trinidad, we're talking about Barbados. Because these two islands must get involved if we have horse racing here.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, that's nice to hear. Because the argument that they believe that horse racing can not just bring the entertainment side to the parish, but also spur some economic activity.
Yes. Serious economic activity.
But someone is saying that they don't think they have the infrastructure for the horse racing in Simon.
Well, I don't know. I can't. But Daigo area up there is a good area too.
Yeah, well, I hope so.
That could be developed for horse racing.
Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah. That's an argument that was made. That even if Simon is not in a position, there's lots of space for and with horse racing, the dimensions could be different, because even here horse racing in the United States, for example, the various horse racing areas, they have somewhat furlongs, whatever it is. So it's not.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not a particular size, and you're doing it for, as you say, entertainment and economic activities.
Economic activity. I remember that boy going to horse racing. I can remember as a little boy going up to horse racing, in Simon.
Yeah, having some fun with those guys. They say there you go, could raise them donkey and them first to try it out. I keep Julian. I think I'll have to talk to Mr. Julian about you. You have been a bad. Yeah, he has been a bad student today. I'll let your father, talk to you. A bad student today. Yeah, but interestingly enough, as we get ready to wrap, Mr. Simmons, I still want us to reflect on the whole issue of sports, and you can probably do it in terms of sports in St. Andrews and sports in Grenada as a whole. Mm-hmm. What's your current view, and let's take away the whole issue of the pandemic. Let's just put things as normal as it was. Do you think prior to the COVID-19 that sports in Grenada is where it should be, or we could have done better, or we should be doing better? What's your view on sports in Grenada?
I think we should be doing better. You see, I believe that we had enough impetus to capitalize on, to propel sports. But if we are working in a vacuum and we don't really have a lead on what needs to be done, then we'll just continue being in transition. So I think what needs to happen now is that we need to, there's an urgent need for the implementation of a serious policy that will define and say exactly what needs to happen. along with that, I know it will take time to implement, but we have to start giving tangible support to our athletes so that they will find time to train, they will have the resources to get what they need to get in terms of the nutrition, in terms of the clothing, the gears, and so forth, and give more support to the national associations that will spearhead the endeavors. You know, so the national association will work with the coaches, and the coaches will work with the athletes, and then the whatever needs to be ironed out in terms of giving the support to the athletes could be ironed out, you know, between the coaches and the athletes. So you have to find some system to strengthen what is happening right now. And but there are a lot of impetus, man. There are a lot of good things happen, you know, that should be able to motivate the athletes and the associations to do much better. But the lead has to come from those at the top, meaning the government.
And the parish. Let's go at the parish. I mean, because there was initially some talk about in terms of basketball, you know, and others, but in terms of sports in general in the parish of St. Andrews, and you talk about still being active, not necessarily in terms of the politics and thing, but if you have to provide guidance, leadership, mentorship, you know, and it's particularly in sports, what it is you will do in your community, especially in St. Andrew.
Well, not so long ago, I was coaching a basketball team, you know, a community basketball team. I was coaching, and actually, it was fulfillment of a promise I made during the election campaign. You know, I tell them, win or lose, I'm going to make sure that I get involved in getting them to organize. And we've been working on that. Things kind of fall through after a while, and with this COVID, you know, not using that as an excuse. But there are other things that are happening that, you know, I'll find time to put myself in to help organize, especially with basketball. Especially with basketball. You know?
We have a couple comments. Let me get it. We have a couple comments coming in there while you were speaking regarding to a couple things regarding the horse racing and all of that. It seems as if it has developed quite a lot of interest. Barbados has a good horse racing circuit going down at the Garrison. If you think for a child is expensive, try caring for horses. They go, yes. We know Akim. Horse racing was recently reintroduced in St. Lucia. Okay, I think this is what Toro was saying. If you think caring for a child is expensive, try caring for a horse. Yeah.
Yes, that is true. That is the reason why I'm saying that we need to have the private sector. That must be driven by the private sector.
Mm-hmm.
By the private sector. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Sorry?
What Deputy is what Deputy saying is really true, because myself and Bayi had a discussion on that already. And it's the same thing he was saying. It's very expensive and a lot of people have to be involved in caring for the horse or for the horses.
Yeah, it's a structure. Yeah. Mike Batiste is saying it's a national disgrace. Mudu, and I think it's Darren Mudu he's referring to, is not a national athlete. His last intercall was proof of potential he has, and this is coming from a tongue man. And I think Mudu is not just football, well, not just an athlete, but he's also a national footballer, if I'm not mistaken. Very brilliant interview, totally love it. Let me see. We have to create incentives to the business community to support sports. Back to the sports policy, I would say, when you talk about create incentives. Government budget allocation is never enough for the development and implementation of sports programs and policies rather. And we will pull you in. I hear you loud and clear. Well, I think Dwight is saying that probably you expressed an interest. So, and Clev is saying 2016 Intercall 4x4 Relay Sports Meet will go down in history as one of the most competitive ever. Let us not allow that competition to become our Mara at the expense of young athletes. And talking about that, I think it may be a good way to just end the program by just looking at that. It was just coincidental. Clev, we'll come back to you to wrap up, but Triggs, just for a moment, I want you to look at this.
I'm going to give my team the best chance to win.
Why are they keeping them so long?
And they're off.
It's the start of the 4x400 meters open for boys. It's excitement all around the stadium. SAS makes an early lead here, but GBSS is not going to give up. GBSS is trailing on the heels of the St. Andrews Anglican Secondary School. It's sort of a winner-take-it-all situation here at the National Stadium. SAS looking good, so too is GBSS. Then there's Grenville Secondary. Happy Hill Red Bulls are there as well. Sherry is pushing for them. GBSS edging up on SAS on the outside. It's not a good idea to try to overtake on the bend. GBSS in the lead. SAS regains composure and regains a slight advantage. But here comes Happy Hill Red Bulls on the outside. SAS seemingly with the handover first. Then it's Happy Hill Red Bulls, then GBSS. It's SAS making the first changeover. GBSS, then Happy Hill.
So it is GBSS, followed by Happy Hill. It is SAS, followed by GBSS, followed by Happy Hill. It is SAS stamping some dominance here.
That looks like Darren
SAS
Nudu.
is saying that we're not going to go up to the big parish without Intercall 2016. 15 meters lead. It is SAS. Darren Mudu. Darren Mudu is saying, hey, this is my last race of the day. I'm going to give it all I got. It's Darren Mudu from the St. Andrews Anglican Secondary School. It is GBSS. Let's see who is representing GBSS here. Oh my goodness, look at the run back from the GBSS boy. Is this Talon James? I think it is Talon James.
It looks like Talon James.
It looks like Talon, but it is still SAS in the lead, GBSS second. And let's see what's going to take place here.
SAS continues to lead on this one. GBSS trails closely behind. But we still have Junior Charles to finish off for SAS. But GBSS is not going down without a fight. They're in this one. They're counting themselves in. GBSS moves into the lead now. GBSS over SAS. SAS almost stumbled in the process. Is he going to maintain that lead? Is SAS going to give up just like that? GBSS will have to win and SAS will have to come somewhere down the line. But GBSS pulls away from SAS. Junior Charles will have his work cut out for him. GBSS looking composed here. Is he going to hand over first? They're coming up to the final handover. GBSS with a sizable lead over SAS. GBSS, what a run by this athlete from GBSS. He's pulling away from SAS.
And it's GBSS taking the battle first. It is GBSS in the lead. Oh my goodness. Where is the picture? Come on. It is GBSS in the lead. It is SAS second. Now what is going to happen here? It is GBSS really motoring down the back straight. There comes the big man, Junior Charles from SAS. Junior Charles is going to stamp his authority here. It is a final change to what is going to happen. But I think Junior Charles is large and in charge here. Junior Charles, SAS, GBSS, Junior Charles, GBSS, GBSS, Charles. What is happening here? My goodness! My word, Leslie! Oh my goodness! What a race!
Fitting entry in the fall 2016. They had to go for it. They had to go for championship honors. But Adams, what that means is that SAS are the new champions of Intercall Games 2016.
Congratulations to the outfit from the big parish. They really competed hard. They strategized well. Whatever fell into place for them. But we must say, big up to the big parish. Congratulations. Wonderful competition by GBSS, but we could not have asked for a better fitting end to sport.
What a finale to this event. A fitting finale as well. A great run by the athlete in the third leg here for GBSS.
Oh yeah, I know. It, somehow I had it waiting, and then all of a sudden I saw the information came up about that 2016, and I say it's a way to end it. Always. I mean, I just look back at that race sometimes, just as so probably you look at a movie, you know, because I chat with some of those guys now and again. The commentators had some of their names wrong, but in terms of the athletes that they're placing, because I think what they had on paper, I think the teams at the last moment probably change it up a bit, because they had mixed up Talon James and others, and then there was Neptune who actually ran the last leg for GBSS along with Junior Charles,
Okay.
it was. I know, and that's the names that were being called a while ago in terms of the Darren Mudu and the Junior Charles, and I think this event will go down in history of Intercall as one of the most competitive and exciting. I mean, 2016, I could always recall that. I was actually in Grenada that year for that Intercall. And it was one that, can't, I'm telling you. I personally got a little emotional. I mean, not supporting GBSS or whatever, just the competitiveness, because I knew all the athletes, I knew all the athletes. And it's something too that I thought the media missed it, to be honest with you. I thought the media missed it. I actually went to Channel 6 Community Channel, got the actual video of that and put it on YouTube because I thought it was something that we should, cherish. Remembering those athletes, and somehow, and I could understand the whole issue of production and otherwise, because there are a lot of athletes that got left. They got left because everything was on GBSS and SAS, so that was it. But there were other athletes who were competing from other schools, and somehow, so there were some shortcomings in terms of the production and things like that. These are things that can always be sorted out in the future, but I think it's something that track and field in Grenada, athletes in Grenada should be proud of. Whether you're from GBSS, whether you're from SAS, PBC, HAPL, whatever. But to witness that or to actually relive those memories, I think is something they should cherish.
Yes. I agree.
Clev is just teasing you about SAS all the way, a whole GBSS guy. I think he's trying to make he's trying to please his wife, Yeah, well, he has to. I mean, if the wife is watching that, he has to say SAS all the way, He did say, this is from my wife, Betty, But yeah, a good way to end, and we started off talking about the rivalry between the GBSS and PBC and SAS, and what a good way, because you would have been part of the process in terms of competing, being a principal as well, and sharing in the defeats as well as the victories, over the years between the rivalry between the schools. Final thoughts, final words from you, Mr. Simmons?
Yes, well, I want to call upon all Grenadians, both home and abroad, to ensure that we keep ourselves safe in this critical period of world history, because we are really affected by this COVID-19, and it's something that we need to take very seriously. I know there are a lot of conspiracy theories going on, what this is and what is not, but the bottom line is that the history will show that in 1918 it was real, and the mass was a very critical component in terms of people fighting to stay alive and people fighting to make sure that they didn't spread the disease. Added to that, from my little reading and my little research, I recognize that only three major islands or three territories in the Caribbean that was really affected greatly by it. It was Jamaica, Belize, and Guyana. The Eastern Caribbean, although 50,000, I think around 50 to 100,000 people passed away, but the Eastern Caribbean was relatively safe, and we are somewhat experiencing something similar to that right now. So we have to be forewarned, and there are some basic protocols that we need to adhere to and pay attention to. It's like the wearing of the mask, physical distancing.
Oh my, I think we would have lost. Oh, he's back up. Continue. The social protocols.
Washing of the hands.
Mm-hmm.
You know, these are three basic things that we need to pay particular attention to. And so I just want to encourage all of us to adhere to the protocol, and you know, we together we'll fight COVID and come out victoriously.
Okay.
So once again, I want to really for the opportunity for you have given me today to share, and I was able to share very freely without having no axe over my head.
even the politics. Yeah, but just to end, I think I had asked you that question earlier, and I just getting clarity from Naka regarding that whole issue of sports tourism. Thanks, Naka, for that clarification. What he's actually saying was that sports tourism was or is used as a means of raising revenue for the clubs and other stakeholders. He says, like the caterers, the buses, the guest houses. In the last 8 years, we had Beckway All-Stars of St. Vincent twice, Tobago All-Stars, Barry Stewart Academy, Trinidad, Parks Aces, Tobago, Shack Attack, Trinidad, Plaz Academy, St. Vincent. And they spent an average of $12,000 per visit, plus additional revenue is collected during those games. So you're saying, was speaking with the authorities to use the Trinidad and Tobago boat, he says the Spirit, I think it's called, that will carry about 400 mass players from Trinidad to do same for weekend sporting events between the countries in basketball, netball, football, volleyball, men and women. Good idea in terms of how they get the boats to come to Grenada from Trinidad during Carnival to play, you know, mass and things like that. So, and it's about 400 masqueraders coming up on the boat. Why not use it to, you know, for sports, you know, between the islands? Good idea. And I think it says
the answers are in the communities. The answers are in the communities, yes.
Well, apart from that, then you need the political will as well, because as he's saying, you know, speaking to the authorities, once you have to talk to the authorities, I guess as much you'll need certain concessions, whatever, you know.
You need political will.
Yeah, for that. Yeah. Right. So thank you very much, and thanks Clef and Toro and Harold and Hamlet and Vida and Dwight and Troublesome Akeem and you know, and your sons Kwame and others, Donna, Granty, well the Grants I should say. Thank you all for for being part of today's program. Just as a note, and it's not confirmed as yet, but I hope to confirm it within, you know, the next few days. Hopefully on Thursday, our next guest should be Darren Sammy, the captain of the St. Lucia Zooks, and former West Indies captain Darren Sammy. Well, he agreed to be on the program. He's just confirming whether he will be on Thursday. And then next Saturday, God's willing, we should have Peter Blair. We remain in St. Andrew. We should be having Mr. Peter Blair to speak to us on sports, specifically in the parish of St. Andrew. We'll be talking football and all about the, you know, the St. Andrews Football League and, you know, a host of other things from the big parish. And we have a number of other guests that I can tell you about who have agreed to be on our program. Mr. Dwayne Gill, the president of the Grenada Cricket Association, is also the CEO of Windwards Cricket. He's expected to be on our program. We also have Mr. Cecil Greenwich, former sports coordinator from way back when. He will be on our program sometime in the coming weeks. We're still working on some others. Just we have to make connection with them to be on the program. But I want to thank you, Mr. Simmons and Mrs. Simmons, for providing you with the refreshments. Yeah, I told you it would be a long one, so I know she was refilling and refilling. But thank you for being on the program. And Yeah, yeah. Good to see that Mr. Simmons is up and about, and for all those who have been providing comments from wherever you are, thank you once again for making this program what it is, and we hope to see you. Well, bear in me, folks. On Saturday, we try to have these sort of programs because we have no limit in terms of time. We went with Mr. Ram, folks, for 3.5 hours, and Mr. Ram, folks, was surprised that I finished. He was like, I'm just getting ready to go. We went with Mr. Paul Roberts for in excess of 3 hours, and he too. I mean, even at their age, they're willing to go the distance. So that's why we leave that sort of program where it's a little more relaxed, and folks can chime in questions. We cannot do that during the week because we kind of constrained to probably the 1 hour segment. But on Saturday, we free to go, which would, as long as possible. We go the distance, 3 hours, and you made it 3:20 this time. Thank you very much.
All right,
Okay, then. All the best. Mr. Patrick Simmons, former sports minister. He's now an active farmer. And folks, if you want, you can, the interview, the full-length interview is on Facebook as well as YouTube. So you can tune in and get it there. But as I said, we're hoping to have on Thursday on our program Mr. Darren Sammy. We hopefully confirm that in the next day or two. And he will be our guest on the program. We'll be talking cricket, and we'll be talking not just cricket in the Windward Islands, but also West Indies. Darren Sammy is a straight talker when it comes to interviews. So if once we confirm, have your questions ready, because Darren is always, Sammy is always willing to provide answers. Once again, thank you very much, and see you on Thursday, God's willing, for another of the TalkSports program. Bye.